Chivalry of a Failed Knight, Volume 0. Introduction. Hello, readers. It's Kagami Kusakabe, investigative reporter for the Hagun Academy Newspaper Club, and her friend Nagi Arasuan. Thanks as always for reading the Hagun Academy wall newspaper. Today's issue is a special edition. I thought we'd show you some events of interest at school which we haven't had time for in regular publications. Hey, Kagamin, I was wondering, why did you recruit me for this when I'm not a member of the newspaper club? Because I can always use another helper. But, oh yeah, it hurts. When I remember how Alice Jan stabbed me in the back, it hurts so much. Okay, I'll do it. Ho ho ho, being agreeable is great, right? Now, we're not gonna do our usual comedy routine, so let's get right into the first event. Starting us off is back at the first round of the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival's representative selection battles. The worst one, who was still a nameless held-back student, had just defeated the Hunter, a prominent contender for representative status. That's quite a while back, isn't it? How nostalgic. Senpai began advancing steadily after that match. It was a rather strange period where the worst one's strength was becoming more and more famous in the academy. Anyway, please enjoy. Chapter 1. A Princess's Foreign Culture Experience. Part 1. War was originally unrefined. As the crossing of fists, it was quite far from beautiful, instead taking the form of overpowering violence. Put simply, it was merely attacking and defeating an enemy with no elegance, a graphic reality born from competing to survive. But through millennia of history, humanity refined war with beauty and elegance through something called the way of the warrior, crystallizing honed principles and accumulated wisdom into a human philosophy backed by reason and discipline. Indeed, the sword skill of Ikki Kuragain, currently swinging his blade in the courtyard of Hagun Academy, could be called beautiful and elegant. He was, at the moment, using one of his swordsmanship forms to improvise a martial arts demonstration for the opponents he was facing. Except he had 5 of them. Take these. Have it yow. In the courtyard, all 5 raised a unified shout and attacked Ikki with the weapons in their hands. Sword and spear and even hatchet, with fire and lightning and other elements dwelling within, these were no ordinary weapons wielded by ordinary people. The opponents were blazers, modern-day magic users who shaped their souls into armaments. Their flame and lightning had the power to burn with a touch. But even a touch was not to be had. Ikki Kuragain handled all the attackers together, armed with a single sword. What kind of sorcery was this? One attacker wondered. His spear that had been thrusted full force was now stabbed into the ground. With no sensation of being parried, his strike was turned aside as if he had been aiming toward the earth from the beginning, as if it was all a bad dream. But what was true for the 5 of them was seen differently by the people gathered around watching the demonstration. Amid the unending rain of weapons, Ikki's dancing sword motions displayed an unmistakable elegance and beauty, handling them with calm and easy movements. Even those who were only walking past the courtyard found their feet stopping so that they could get a look. Gee, how's this possible? There's no way this'll work. Ha ha, can't get a hit. Before long, the 5 attacking students cried out and fell down onto the courtyard grass. Well, let's end it here then. Thanks for following along with me. No, that's fine. But to think even 5 people together can't touch you. Gay ha, and you ain't sweatin' at all. Are you a monster? In fact, while the 5 did have ineffective movements, Ikki himself had dealt with the attacks almost entirely with footwork, dodging their blades with 10 centimeters to spare. He hardly used any strength or endurance and had no reason to sweat. With the demonstration over, around 10 boys and girls rushed up to Ikki. These were Ikki's classmates. Wow, amazing. You're not even breathing hard. Who knew a martial arts demonstration would be so artistic? It really looked like dancing, even though those guys were so exhausted. Oh no, I was watching and forgot to take pictures. What a lifelong regret this'll be for Kagami Kusakabe, president of the Hagun Academy Newspaper Club. Senpai, do it again. One more photo op, please. even though I asked you not to. It's too embarrassing to see my own face on newspaper articles plastered across the school. That's fine. It won't be a school article. I'll only sell it outside. That's not what I thought fine means. Now, his reason for presenting a martial arts demonstration was that while he was relaxing in the courtyard during lunch break, his classmates came begging him for some sword techniques they could use. For a school of blazers who aimed to become mage knights, it was very unusual. His classmates had naturally different talents and no need for martial arts. As common thinking goes, they could use the time for such practice on broadening the scope of their individual powers instead. The only ones who set about like Ikki were similarly inferior students with few accomplishments, or the truly powerful who understood the truth. Given this, Ikki was quite happy that his blazer classmates had come with interest in martial arts, so he answered their request and gave the demonstration, but now, as I told everyone, this was the most orthodox and least showy form I know, so that should do as a model. No. Frankly, all we got out of it was that it's pretty awesome. I thought so. Combat was not so simple that it could be learned by sight. Even Ikki's blade steel took heaps of bloody effort. This reaction was entirely expected. It's not like I can just see it and remember it the way Kyoragen-kun can, huh? But in Ikki-kun's case, he could steal the secrets of a style that he hasn't been shown before just by observing it in the middle of a fight. That's not a human ability, right? Which means, senpai, you remember every single sword technique that you've ever seen. Of course, that's basically been my lifeline. How many different kinds would that be in total? Including Stella's Imperial Arts recently, it would be 126, I guess. 800. I'm surprised that you picked up this many, but it's also surprising that so many sword styles still survive. There are schools without a proper dojo, and those that only exist in documents. When I was in middle school, I wanted to become strong somehow, and whenever I had the time, I'd hunt for all the dojos in the area to challenge them, or bounce around libraries and museums studying sword techniques that stopped being taught long ago, stuff like that. At those words, the classmates around Ikki took a collective breath. If that's how you got so skilled, I can believe it. A regular old special technique would have been cheating. I guess martial arts is also a road to a different kind of talent. In the end, it looks impossible for people like us to become like Kyoragen-kun, huh? The classmates were depressed at the difficulty of becoming another Ikki. His sword skill already transcended common sense, so awe towards it was understandable, and they decided to again give up on gaining a new kind of talent. With their existing ones, they did not need the same level of commitment. You don't have to concentrate on swordsmanship so much. You all have proper abilities, unlike me, so you don't have to go as far as I do. By using your own extraordinary devices, you can fight with greater range, and I don't think there's any disadvantage in trying to learn just a little. So if you feel like it, I can give you some advice. Yeah, if we can add this to our abilities, we could do a lot more. Yes, I'll work hard if Kyoragen-kun teaches me. In that case, you need to train your core and your inner muscles, since firm stability is important no matter what you do. Let's talk about the kind of training needed for that. First, the ones who asked for the training were the cute younger boys and girls, firing Ikki up about it too, and his lecture lasted for half an hour. Hugh, doing things you're not used to is tiring, huh? Ikki sat down on a bench in the courtyard and let out a breath, where a female student approached him. You're so diligent, Ikki. Not just your own practice, but watching over your underclassmen too. Stella Vermilion, a crimson-haired girl with radiant eyes, stood holding her hands behind her as if hiding something. She was Ikki's roommate who had come from a distant country to study abroad, and since just a few days ago, his girlfriend. Stella gazed at the classmates in the courtyard who were immediately putting what Ikki taught them into practice. All I see is them standing on one leg wriggling. Is there meaning to that? It's funny that they look like badly made scarecrows, but oops, someone fell over. How clumsy. It's not even 30 seconds yet. Ha. Well, they can't help it when they're just starting out. It's more like an exercise than a form of training. Huh, so you're not going to train them? Don't say that. At this stage, I can't have them do too much. I just thought I'd have them learn the importance of core and inner muscles first. It's always more common in a fight to push with one foot than to stand evenly on both feet. You constantly go from one foot to the other when moving, shifting center of gravity, so not being able to keep balanced on one foot is a bad thing for combatants. You already know that without me saying it, right, Stella? Well, that's true. In Chinese boxing, it was warned of as the twin illnesses. Illness was an exaggeration, but in truth, standing with center of gravity spread evenly across both feet was dangerous enough to be worth calling a sickness, since if something happened suddenly, it would not be possible to switch into movement. It was a stance full of weaknesses, and weakness leads directly to death. This was why martial artists warn against it, an understanding common to all sorts of martial and swordsmanship styles. Among combat arts, no stance involved settling one's weight evenly between both feet, and so Ikki had everyone learn this first. You really do want everyone to become stronger. That depends on their willingness, but I'll help them with anything they want to achieve. Huh, but is it all right? If there's someone more skillful with the sword, you'd be making an unbelievable rival. Not all of them, but some of them might appear in the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival representative selection battles. The 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. It was where all the student knights of Japan fought for the unique title of 7 Stars Sword King. Both Ikki and Stella were aiming for that summit, and since the summit had only room for one, everyone else was a rival. Stella pointed this out, and Ikki smiled as if he was having fun. Actually, I'd welcome it. That would let me both teach and fight. Besides, someday we'll be forced to fight with our lives on the line. Not even someday. As student knights, they had responsibilities. For example, in the event that a blazer conducts terrorism inside the city, student knights would be tasked with protecting citizens in danger. And in fact, Ikki and Stella had already been in such a situation, fighting against a terrorist from rebellion in real combat. Ikki and the others had prevailed because of their strength, but there were occasions where student knights gave their lives on duty. Such tragedies exist. Wouldn't you want to avoid that? If anyone was ever in a predicament, and my advice can help things even a little, nothing would make me happier. The words of response to Stella's question were not at all a bluff. They were obviously Ikki's true feelings. Hearing them, Stella's faint pink lips broke into a small smile. That does sound like you. Like me. That soft-heartedness. Because he had no superlative talent, his parents and the adults around him disdained him, dealt with him harshly, and ultimately even held him back a school year for absurd reasons, but Ikki's heart did not falter. That made Stella happy and proud. It was what made him the knight she loved. And it was why Stella wanted to become more intimate with Ikki, so she moved closer. Well, hey, Ikki, you were doing a lot of talking and moving just now, right? Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty thirsty thanks to all that. At Ikki's reply, Stella's face lit up. Then. But in the moment, Stella brought out the thing she was hiding behind her back. Oni-sama. A sweet and playful voice interrupted, and another girl slid into the space between her and Ikki. Whoa. Ikki let out a surprised voice at the sudden embrace from the side, and turned to look at the new girl of silver hair and light skin, a girl whose entire body was as pale as ephemera. She was. Shizuku, you surprised me. Ikki Kuragane's sole younger sister, Shizuku Kuragane. Catching Ikki's right hand in her embrace, Shizuku brought her face closer like a spoiled kitten. Hee, what's surprising? Who else would share such intimate touches with you, Oni-sama? No, lately the girls have been pretty bold so. For example, even his classmate Kagami Kusakabe had hugged him on their first meeting. He still remembered that sensation vividly. Huh, such people exist, do they? Could you tell me their names? Shizuku pulled out a black notebook from somewhere and opened it up. With a smile that seemed too stiff to come from the heart, she gazed at him with eyes that devoured light. It was very frightening. Ikki knew instinctively that he must not give Kagami's name, so he bluntly changed the subject. By the way, Shizuku, won't you move away a bit? I smell of sweat right now. Oh, that's why I'm sticking so close. Don't you get it, Oni-sama? I don't. Ikki could only feel troubled by Shizuku, who was pressing her body even more strongly on him, with eyes narrowing in a coquettish smile. She was his little sister that he reunited with after 4 years apart, but Ikki could no longer comprehend what she was thinking. Well, that's enough of skinship. Here you go, Oni-sama. Saying so, Shizuku presented a cold can of sports drink to Ikki. Since you've been teaching your classmates those sword basics, I brought you something to fill up your energy again. Ah, that's a big help, just when I was getting parched. Yes, I thought you'd be. Oni-sama, you must be happy to have such an attentive and wonderful little sister. Haha, I'm grateful. Expressing his thanks at Shizuku's goodwill, Ikki popped the can's pull tab and quenched his thirst. Is it refreshing? Yeah, it helps a lot. Does it taste like me? Beverage spewed from his nose. What does that mean? Hee, it was a joke. I haven't done anything like kiss the opening of the can. No, not at all. What an awfully specific denial. You're easy to tease, Oni-sama, so how could anyone help but bully you? Don't look at me like you're waiting for agreement. Well, putting it aside, there's something I've been worried about. With those words, Shizuku's turned her head, and her face full goodwill toward Ikki changed into an entirely scornful one. I wonder why Stella-san is standing like a statue there with 2 cans of juice. She directed her statement to Stella, now standing stock still with a can in each hand after having the conversation snatched away from her. At Shizuku's question, Stella went red and her gaze wobbled uncomfortably. This is. Oh my, did you want to give Oni-sama some refreshment? Hi, is that so, Stella? No way. Why do I have to do something like that for someone like Ikki? It was a very ordinary thing for sweethearts to do, but Stella could not say it, because she was the 2nd imperial princess of the Vermilion Empire, and finding a lover while studying abroad would cause a scandal. Such a rumor must not spread on mass media, so Ikki and Stella both agreed that their new relationship must be kept secret. She could not say it. Even if she wanted to say it, it would not leave her mouth. Then why do you have 2 cans of juice? This, right, so I can drink both. I see. What a misunderstanding I've made. Since you've lost to Oni-sama in a match, how unfortunate that you two must be together, right? Since you're not a couple, there's no chance you'd be doing such things, Of course not. So thirsty I might die. Even 2 cans aren't enough. In this desperate situation, Stella opened the pull tabs on both cans. Even though she bought an extra for Ikki, it was too late to say it. With tears in the corner of her eyes, Stella downed the juices in 1 swig each herself. No backbone. Staring with half-lidded eyes at Stella gulping the beverages down, Shizuku murmured that short statement. Shizuku. It's nothing. By the way, Oni-sama, if you wouldn't mind then could you teach me swordsmanship? Ikki blinked in confusion at Shizuku's request, which seemed intended to change the subject. But doesn't the head branch have sword instructors? My specialty is katana, so I think learning kodachi techniques from them would be better. The Kurigane house they belonged to was famous for its mage knights, a lineage that has produced many strong, world-renowned fighters. Unlike those who depended entirely on supernatural abilities, as was common across the world, the Kurigane understood the importance of martial arts, and their children were all trained in martial arts with their devices. This should include Shizuku, who must have been taught the Kurigane style's kodachi techniques. Why would she ask him for help? Shizuku replied, with frank repugnance on her face. After you left the house, Oni-sama, I stopped taking their instruction at once. I won't learn from that lot who drove you away. I see. Ikki understood from her reply. If we produce a failure, the family's status will fall. 4 years ago, Ikki left the Kurigane house because it locked him away and refused him even a single bit of sword training for the reasons stated above. Ikki had no regrets about leaving, but causing a rift between Shizuku and the house did leave him guilty. With that the case, it was his duty as her brother to watching over Shizuku's martial arts training. Okay, I remember the basics of the Kurigane Kodachi technique, so if you're fine with it, you can depend on me. Thank you. Shizuku expressed her gratitude with a shining smile, and Ikki's lips also curled upward despite himself. What brother would feel bad being trusted so by a cute little sister? Ikki, if you're training Shizuku, then train me too. Stella barked out those words suddenly, having finished her drinks. Huh, okay. But Ikki's face scrunched up at that request. What, you don't want to? It's not that, I just don't think there's anything I could teach you. That's not true. I lost in our duel, didn't I? But still. Apparently Ikki could not muster up enthusiasm for teaching Stella swordsmanship at all. Seeing this, Stella's eyebrows bristled upward. Why you only paying attention to Shizuku? Huh, and no, that's not what I'm trying to. Fine, it's not like I need you to teach me. Actually, I don't want you teaching me at all, I was just saying it. Watch, next time we fight I'll beat you up. As if a perverted siscon who skimps on training is a match for me. Idiot. Stella ran away with tears in her eyes and tongue sticking out from her lips. Ah, what a completely contrary person. But it was his fault. Ikki had a reason for making that face, but if he pointed it out with a half-hearted attitude, Stella would be justified thinking she was being left out. I'll have to apologize later. Oni-sama. Oni-sama, do you really not want to teach Stella-san? Not one bit. Since there was no one left to make a fuss, Ikki said so plainly. Because that's not for me to do. What do you mean? For example, both you and my classmates have obvious points of inexperience. I can see what you need to be taught, but Stella's different. She's gone beyond the level of someone like me a long time ago, and more than anything else, our sword styles are rooted in different things. Rooted? My swordsmanship is fundamentally about technique. My sword cuts with skill, but Stella's sword is the blade of someone truly powerful, able to crush the opponent with a wave of her hand. That's the foundation she already builds on, so her sword doesn't need the kind of little tricks and fragmented styles I use. If I introduce those things in her carelessly, I might be a bad influence. Since I'm not responsible for teaching her, I won't. And anyway, even if for argument's sake I did so, what would be the point? In short, Ikki's growth depended entirely on his scope of knowledge, but that had no meaning for Stella, a true prodigy. Compared to one with ordinary ability like Ikki, she had immeasurable hidden potential. Because of that, he would rather she always stayed something beyond his imagination. Because Stella is my one true rival. He wanted her to stay his dearest and highest rival, and so Ikki balked at her request. Shizuku, hearing this reason, became a bit sulky. What, then, were the ones who didn't really understand? Shizuku, what did you say? Nothing at all. I just thought that the South Shore was taking things for granted. What? Part 2. What the heck is with that siscon? Only favoring Shizuku. Even though he said he loves me, even though he said that, why can't he stand up to her? I'm your girlfriend, so pay attention to me. Stupid Ikki. Flaring up and scattering embers, Stella stalked down the dormitory hallway with her shoulders quivering in anger. On the way, the bright voice of a tall man whose face was beautiful enough to tremble it called out to her. Oh my, hello Stella-chan. There stood Nagi Arasuin, and with him was Kagami Kusakabe, who had left the courtyard at some point. You're sure throwing out a ton of sparks. Did something happen? Not really, and it's rare to see you in this dorm, Alice. Did you come for something? Just to return a game I borrowed from Kagamin. Tada, it's Private Prince Academy, the top romance game for girls today. I went to Akiba. Won. Last week, and waited in line all night for it. Kagami happily held up the package whose cover depicted boys with long eyelashes. It was a romance simulation game targeted towards young women. Even Stella knew of them, but she lacked deeper knowledge and held a dim view toward such topics. When Stella saw the box, her brows furrowed. That's for lonely women, right? Are you too, like enthusiasts for that kind of thing? Oh my, an imperial princess with such prejudice. What do you think, Kagamin? That's right, Stella-chan. In the last 100 years, Japan's visual novels have been our top cultural export. If you come to Japan without experiencing our romance games, it's like going to France without sampling their cheese. According to one theory, it played a role in the eradication of the South American drug trade. It's that amazing. Is it really? Not just a bit of lazy entertainment. How simple. Indeed, simple. These two were actually bad friends. So how about you try it yourself? No, I'm not really interested, and I've never played one before either. And that's why you should. You have a boy you need advice on, right? What do you think, Alice-chan? Yes, and look at the black-haired boy on this cover. Doesn't he look like someone we know? The game package was thrust before Stella's face, and what she saw among the punk-like boy characters with variously colored hair was indeed a face that resembled a certain someone. Iki. Has the resemblance, huh? That one's name is Issei-kun, and his voice is really similar too, enough where it's a topic among the worst one's hidden fans, you know. That's part of why I went and bought it, since if I actually tried to make a move on Iki, Shizuku would kill me. Anyway, play it with headphones on, and it's like Iki whispering sweet words in your ears. It's glorious. Iki in my ears. Like Iki whispering sweet words. Stella gulped audibly as she imagined it. Being Iki's sweetheart, she could get that from the source, but with them both novices at being a couple, it did not happen easily. They were too bashful to do anything, and in fact they had not even managed to hold hands yet. When the two were alone, they were especially somber and could not have a conversation. And so, Stella was very interested in the idea. How about it, wanna try? It's not like I'm interested just because it looks like. Stella's wavering gaze darted helplessly toward and away from the game Kagami held, and Kagami smiled teasingly. I see, well, I shouldn't force you. She started to pull the game back, but found Stella suddenly gripping Private Princess Academy with amazing strength, preventing the motion. Well, I definitely don't have any personal interest or anything, but you see, just now I said something unfair about these works, and that's not dignified for an international celebrity, right? So given this opportunity, I should study Japanese culture, is what I think. She really is simple, huh? And naive, but that's Stella-chan for you. Okay then, here. You and Kurigane-senpai don't have a console, right? I'll bring one later, and you can return it whenever. Thanks. And I'll tell you how to get to the Issei route, since you're probably not interested in the other characters. Yeah, not at all, B, because it's too much work, okay? Not because he looks like Iki, got it? Yes, I know. Kagamin and I both know that very well. Stella-chan's acting very much like a girl of Vegeta's. 2. Lineage. D don't call it acting. And so the Vermilion Empire's princess was enticed into her first time playing a romance video game by her evil friends. Part 3. Private Prince Academy was set in a boys' school for rich sons of government officials that had just become co-ed, into which the girl protagonist had entered. It was a harem story of enjoying the springtime of life with elegant, clear-headed, handsome young men of good pedigree. Having few adventure elements, it was an orthodox visual novel with branching points based on user choices and the rest of the content entirely text. Stella, who was not familiar with video games outside of first-person shooters and racing simulations, could not help but find the introduction boring. Hey, when's this going to start? It's already started, though. But there's no enemy. This isn't that kind of game. Well, depending on how things play out, going on dates can turn into giant messes where fights happen. But anyway, Issei-kun's about to appear. And the scene indeed unfolded like Arasuin claimed, with Stella the school protagonist and the boy pictured on the package that greatly resembled Iki, Issei Washamine, crashing into each other as they turned the same corner. With a voice that greatly resembled Ikki's, the new arrival said, "Watch where you're going, ugly. What's gonna happen if you put a scar on me, the next head of the Washamine Zaibatsu? Apologize sincerely. Look away and retort. Right arrow say nothing and German suplex. No mercy." Stella chose the third option almost by reflex. The screen displayed the digital art image of the protagonist performing a manly suplex. It was a beautiful wrestler's bridge. Hee hee, well done, my other self. A flawless execution. Wow, throwing out a suplex in that situation. You don't have any intention of capturing his heart, do you? But he was so irritating. And first of all, what was that? His face and voice do resemble Ikki's, but his personality's completely different. It's a scam, a scam. The creators don't know Ikki at all. It's not like they used Ikki as a model. It's just resemblance. But, well, doing the suplex is actually the right choice. Huh. Stella blinked at Arasuen's words, and at the same time on the screen, Issei slowly got up. I've been searching so long for someone who would correct my crooked self with a German suplex. Please go out with me. A hot-blooded love confession was uttered. Pervert. You'd think it was a joke option, but it's actually the way to the Issei route, apparently. I was completely fooled at first. What a complicated setup, falling in love because of getting German suplexed. It seems his mother, who passed away long ago, used to scold him with that when he misbehaved. Isn't that just child abuse? But how amazing, you got into the route with one try. I didn't need to be here at all. So you're saying that I'm already following this guy's story? Yes, from now on you're following a set path, so there won't be more difficulties. Saying so, Arasuen got up and turned toward the door. Well, I'm off. The game's best enjoyed alone, after all. And he left. Seeing him go, Stella sighed. Honestly, it would be better if he took this thing back with him. No matter how much face and voice may match, such a different personality made the character uninteresting. Or rather, whether or not there was a resemblance to Ikki, who would want a pervert like this in the first place? I should go give this back to Kagami. Thinking so, Stella stretched out her hand toward the PlayStation's power button. I can't look at anyone but you. The voice, so very similar, shot from speakers to Stella's eardrums. Her head sprang up, and she saw the sad face of Issei looking like an abandoned puppy, an expression entirely like Ikki's. Stella wordlessly plugged in headphones. As the game progressed, it became quickly apparent why Issei had his attitude. He was the child of the Washamine Zaibatsu's head, who had eloped with a common girl. After his father died of illness, his grandfather, who wanted an heir, took him from his mother against his will. His mother also died of illness without him by her side, so in resentment he paraded around arrogantly, sullying the Washamine name. Sob, you had it hard too, right? At first she had been offended by Issei's behavior, but after finding out the cause, Stella could not blame him for what felt very much like Ikki's own circumstances. She had been unbearably bored by the intro, but once she started playing, she became more and more absorbed in the game. Even in the narrative's slow pacing, there were bright points to be found. Walking together on the way to school. Going to an amusement park for a day off. Secretly heading out to the beach at night during the school trip. Neither zombies nor Soviet soldiers popped out, but boredom was far away, and instead every moment was heart-pounding. Indeed, if happiness was having days filled with love, then spending time with one's sweetheart was delightful. But this Ikki was at every single moment gazing straightforwardly at Stella. His attention never pulled away no matter who else might be nearby. His gaze was always aimed at the person in front of the screen. This is convention for visual novels. His sweet whispers were always at her ears. He was never talking about sister this, sister that. He's always ready for me. How wonderful it was. 3 years passed, and graduation day arrived. In a deserted classroom, Ikki proposed to Stella with the most earnest expression she had ever seen. I love you, Stella. I want you to be with me after graduation, keeping a sleeper hold on my heart. Hearing the romantic words from a voice like Icky's made her cheeks grow hot. No, she knew. Stella knew this was only a game, and what she saw was just a character who resembled Icky. But, if it was just a game, could she not be honest now? Stella was frankly a little dissatisfied with the current stalemate where they could not even hold hands. They had gone through so much to become a couple. No, not just holding hands. She wanted to touch Icky much more than that, to do things with Icky that only couples would do. But she could not say that herself. She could not stand the possibility that he might dislike her for being lewd. It was why she was left waiting for Icky to take the next step. But if Icky did take that step, could she give an honest reply? No. Stella was aware of her own vain and contrary nature. There was no doubt she would find some reason to escape. Yes, like how she was a princess. I would definitely say that. She was such a troublesome woman. Not cute at all. Even Icky would disapprove. But if I practice using this game, then would she not be able to answer him honestly? Would Icky not be even more in love with her? Many seconds passed in hesitation. Stella steeled her resolve and spoke as she pressed the button. I love you too, Icky. Marry me and stay with me forever. Slam asterisk. She heard a loud sound through her earphones, and her eyes widened as she looked behind her to the door and saw Icky collapse there. Sorry, I wasn't trying to peek. It's just I heard noises in here, but you didn't answer no matter how much I knocked. Is that a girl's romance sim? Ahaha, what a surprise. When I heard marry me, my legs went out. But it was just a line from the game, right? What an amazing coincidence that there's a character with my name. Icky's flustered explanation continued when Stella made no response. But for you to be so passionate about it that you'd say it out loud, it's like I'm seeing a whole new side of you. Don't mind me, I'll just get out of here. Sorry for interrupting at the good bit. Tennuo. Dusk fell over the school dormitory, and Stella's scream filled every corner. Dear reader, if you are playing a naughty romance sim in your room with headphones on, you must always keep an eye on the door. Never, ever forget this. References. Up-era. Akiba, Akihabara, a shopping district in Tokyo famous for anime and computer games. Up-era. Vegeta, a character from Dragon Ball Z by Akira Toriyama. He is the prince of the warmongering Saiyan race. Intermission. Letting Stella-chan have such fun makes me happy too. Please don't make that indecent face. Anyway, Stella-chan will probably be more successful next time. Incidentally, the Prinika game was very popular and a sequel is planned. After Stella-chan's scandal was resolved, an unbelievable number of votes were sent in a popularity poll for Issei-kun, putting him highest ranked. Stuff like that happened. It makes you suspect that voting blocks exist. The official homepage's front picture also became Issei-kun topless with a bow tie. And no pants. But the fans of other characters were pissed off, and apparently hacked the publisher's website to put up a photo collage, so be aware, okay. They were wiping their tears with the pants he took off. Now then, let's most on past that quickly. We can deal with that later. The next event is, oh, how nostalgic. In chronological order, it's just a bit before the previous event, a tale of the night after Icky defeated the hunter. Yes, that's right. While Senpai was in a coma, and Stella-chan was with him so she couldn't come, you and Shizuku-chan went to a bar for a small victory celebration, right, Alice-chan? Apparently it was Shizuku's first time drinking, so the host seemed to be a bit nervous. It's because 2 students were at a bar. This is already a scene that would be cut out of an anime. Please don't make this too meta. It's fine, since we're already adults. Chapter 2, Shizuku and her first drink. Part 1. On the night after the battle between the Worst One and the Hunter, Nagi Arasuin brought Shizuku Kurigane to the entertainment district, a number of train stations away from the academy, as a modest celebration of their first victories in the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival representative selection battles. Shizuku, like Stella, wanted to care for Icky, who had collapsed from the exertion of the day's match, but she held back to give Icky and Stella time alone together, and since Shizuku had free time, Arasuin invited her here. I'm a little nervous. Standing before a mix of commercial and residential buildings where their destination awaited, Shizuku, who was wrapped in a Gothic Lolita-style dress, muttered so with a stiff voice. She was the one who requested a place with tasty alcohol, but apparently she had never drunk alcohol before. It was also her first time entering a shop for serving it, and she seemed a little tense. You don't have to be so high-strung. It's not like we're going to a host club. 1. If you took me to a place like that, I wouldn't forgive you, Alice. Oh my, are you that much against the idea? I can't stand any man other than Oni-sama being so overly familiar. No worries. I thought that would be true, so today we're just going to an ordinary bar for drinks. Arasuin led Shizuku forward through the buildings. Ascending narrow stairs, they headed to the highest floor of one, to the front door of the shop where Arasuin had often gone with his female fans. Turning the brass doorknob and pushing the door open, he gestured for Shizuku to enter. Amidst the dimly lit space inside, furniture of calming colors was arrayed and sleepy jazz tunes were flowing. To speak less favorably, there was an air that smelled of age, but this was the best choice given Shizuku's aversion to liveliness. Arasuin and Shizuku stepped onto the deep blue carpet, and a waiter immediately approached. Oh, if it's not Arasuin, welcome back. Good evening. A spot at the bar next to the window would be nice, but is one available? Yes, indeed. Ah, but before that, isn't this your companion's first visit? May I please have verification of her age? Is student identification acceptable? Certainly. At the request, Shizuku took out her Hagun student datapad from her purse, but with her nervousness at doing this for the first time, her handling was strangely clumsy. Wawa. Fumbling with the datapad, Shizuku finally opened the identification screen and handed it to the waiter. Ah, Arasuin-san's classmate. Yes, this will do. Please sit as you like by the window. Normally those of Arasuin and Shizuku's age would not be allowed to drink, but Blazers were formally recognized as having come of age at 15 years old, and able to not only drink, but to marry and vote as adults. These were rights that Blazers held in consideration for their duty to fight without regard for their lives. The waiter, recognizing that Shizuku was old enough to enter, withdrew half a step. Arasuin strode past and sat at the counter, and behind him, Shizuku looked around the shop nervously before following. It was an unfamiliar kind of place for her, so that could not be helped. But after sitting down at the counter, Shizuku said, Wow. Though still nervous, her green eyes lit up, and a gasp leaked out at the view before her. What stole her gaze was many bottles of liquor, lined up behind the bar and a silent bartender using a shaker. Bottles from many countries glimmered like stained glass. They're lit up from behind, aren't they pretty? The bartender here was taciturn and not very hospitable, but he had good taste. Even the room's slightly too dim lighting was to create this rainbow display. In spite of herself, Shizuku was also intrigued by this shop. They're like jewels. That's great. Arasuin patted his chest a bit in relief at choosing the place well. Today's trip was supposedly for celebrating their first victories, but he had set aside this time for the gentle Shizuku and put his best effort into letting her have a good time. Part of that was with good alcohol, and another part was with the shop's atmosphere. Then shall we go ahead and order? What would you like, Shizuku? Shizuku picked up a menu on the countertop. My, I thought you wouldn't know just from looking. After all, the menu only listed the various names of liquors and cocktails. Shizuku, who was not knowledgeable about these things, would not be able to make a selection just by seeing them. But did Arasuin's tone make him seem like he was treating her as a child? How rude. I know the names of one or two of these. Making a somewhat peevish expression, Shizuku chose. A dry martini, please. Cough, cough, asterisk. Arasuin choked, not expecting such an overly strong choice. Wait a second. I don't think that's a good drink for your first time. Certainly the martini, a cocktail made of gin and vermouth, was well known from various movies. But despite its fame, it was not the kind of drink that a novice could take easily. This was even more true for the dry martini, which was almost entirely gin. Shizuku, I know it's new for you, so you don't have to put up that act. Don't go overboard, just start with something easier. Okay. With a tone like an older sister soothing a misbehaving younger one, Arasuin tried to stop Shizuku's rampage. Hearing that tone, Shizuku also recognized how stubborn she was being. Oh, okay, I get it, but I don't know any of the other names here. That's fine. If you tell me what kind of taste you want, I'll find something that matches. Really? Yes. Then, I want something sweet. There's quite a few sweet ones, but they're based on fruits. I see. They do seem like fruit, but are they actually alcohol? They're pretty much just juice. Then won't that just be drinking juice? You went to the trouble of bringing me to a shop like this. I want to take more of a risk. That's understandable. Knowing what Shizuku wanted, Arasuin gave his order to the bartender. After a small wait, a cocktail glass filled with fresh orange-colored liquid was placed before them, with a polite explanation from the bartender who had not spoken a word until now. This is called a Valencia. It's made of orange juice and apricot brandy shaken together, sweet enough to easily drink even for people who aren't used to alcohol. Thank you. Shizuku's gaze held quite a bit of suspicion, probably because someone unfamiliar had suddenly addressed her and brought back a little of her nervousness. The change from her usually prim impression made Arasuin smile a little in his heart. How cute. Back to when they first started rooming together, Shizuku was also unsteady in this way. When they went to the shopping center to watch a movie with Ikki and Stella, the embarrassment she showed from Ikki cleaning the cream from her cheek was something of her real self. On first appearance, it's somewhat like murky orange juice, I guess. Shizuku gazed at the cocktail glass with great interest as Arasuin took the whiskey tumbler, and chaser he himself ordered from the bartender. This is more than half orange juice, but we definitely can't call it orange juice. Don't drink it all at once, okay? I know that. Shizuku puffed out her cheeks a little in annoyance. Was she upset at being told such an obvious thing? Hee, sorry. Then to everyone's wins so far, cheers. Cheers. Raising their glasses together, the two of them celebrated alone. Shizuku held the thin bottom of her cocktail glass with the fingertips of both hands, and much like a hamster nibbling on sunflower seeds, put a bit of the Valencia into her mouth. Her thin, pale neck trembled as she swallowed the alcohol. Phew. A mesmerized breath escaped from her lips. Sweet and tasty. That's good to hear. The airiness of alcohol together with the fragrance of fruit is splendid, isn't it? That's true. Juice will give sweetness, but you can't enjoy fragrance without the alcohol. If you like that, then it'll have the right effect. Watching Shizuku take a second, more enthusiastic sip, Arasuin sighed in relief and drank from his own tumbler. Alice, you're drinking whiskey. When he did so, Shizuku stared at his beverage with great interest as well. Yes, that's right. I like this very much. Can I have a sip of that too? He was a little hesitant, not because it would be an indirect kiss, but because his order of whiskey was a bit of a personal choice. Shizuku, this particular whiskey is rather tricky, something people tend to either love or hate, so I can't recommend it as one of the first kinds of alcohol you should try. If you're not good with it, it can be traumatic. Instead, something like a Macallan. 2. Would be. It's fine. I'm not that interested in whiskey itself, but because you like it. Once he heard that, he could not come up with a reason to refuse her. Well, in that case. Everything was experience. It was not like she would die from drinking it. Thinking this, Arasuin slid his tumbler to Shizuku and gave a warning. Before you drink it, you should take a whiff first. If you don't like it, you can stop. I got it. Shizuku picked up the tumbler with both hands like she did with the other, brought it close to her nose. Sniff, sniff. At that moment, FMHH. Shock, with every hair on her body standing straight up, Shizuku yanked her disbelieving face back. What is this? Iodine tincture. Ahaha, well, that's not an unreasonable reaction. During the American Prohibition era, it was openly sold as medicine. Is it safe? It doesn't smell like something drinkable. That's why I said I can't recommend it. You don't have to push yourself, okay? And no, I said I would. With that, Shizuku brought the end of the tumbler to her mouth and sipped enough to taste it. I'm doing better than I thought I would. Don't say that with tears in your eyes. Here, some water. Arasuin held out his chaser, and Shizuku cleansed her throat with a regretful expression. Ooh, I can't get rid of the medicine smells. I told you so, it's not for beginners. There sure are many kinds of alcohol. It's humanity's faithful companion, with a history just as long. There are as many varieties of alcohol as people. I'd say finding one that fits you is something to look forward to with shops like these. But today's my treat, so just have fun the way you like. Are you sure? Yes, because you're such a good girl today. At Arasuin speaking his true reason for bringing her here, Shizuku's eyes widened, and a small smile appeared. I guess so. Then I'll take you up on the offer. It's unfair for only Stella-san to make good memories today. I have to have fun too, right? Muttering this, Shizuku spoke to the bartender. Excuse me, a dry martini, please. So in the end, you're still getting one. Well, if she collapses, he could carry her back, so it should be fine. Part 2. 1 hour later. And then, Oni-sama dove into a river during winter to save me from almost drowning, swimming to me frantically. He hugged my freezing body, saying thank goodness. We were both soaking wet, so we should have froze, but Oni-sama was so warm. That's when I realized that such a wonderful boy was with me, and I could never like the boys in class. Since compared to Oni-sama, they were so vulgar, not gentlemen at all. Like monkeys. Anyway, Oni-sama's gentle tears were the second most wonderful sight. The most wonderful is seeing him again after so many years, since he grew so tall and his arms were so sturdy. But I still like the cute young Oni-sama with those kind eyes too. Though the sturdy and cool Oni-sama is the best. Hey, Alice, are you listening? I hear you, because it's the third time you're telling me. Shizuku was thoroughly drunk. Her original paleness was now rosy red to her ears, and for quite some time now she had been praising Ikki over and over. As one could expect, even Arasuin would get his fill of that. Ooh, then try guessing what story I'm going to tell. The one on Ikki saving you from drowning in a river, right? MMU. What was I talking about again? Hey Shizuku, how many do you see? Arasuin held up 3 fingers, and Shizuku made a complaining face. What, you're suggesting I'm drunk? No matter how I look at it, that's exactly what you are. There's no way, don't make fun of me. There's 6, right? She's hopeless. The dry martini was the fatal blow after all. Since gin was not something an alcohol novice could drink straight, this could only be called the natural result. And then, there's the time Oni-sama was a Jedi. Are we in Star Black Circle R's now? 3. She was already blending reality and fantasy. Maybe they should go back to the dormitory. Arasuin brought Shizuku here today to take her mind off of Stella and Ikki spending time together alone. Though Shizuku was the one who chose to let them, the decision must have pained her. Arasuin, knowing that Shizuku truly loved Ikki, understood this. Surely if they had stayed in the dormitory, the sadness would be crushing her. Everyone had nights they wanted to waste away without thinking, and seeing Shizuku now, he could say he had provided that. Shizuku seemed to have had a lot of fun narrating her memories of Ikki. With his success assured, Arasuin decided to propose that they return home. But at that moment, he saw cream from the milfai they also ordered stuck on her cheek. Oh my, didn't this happen before? Back when they went out with Stella and Ikki together, cream had been on Shizuku's cheek then too, probably because her mouth was so small. Hey, Shizuku, there's something on your face, you know. Of course, Arasuin did not lick that cream the way Ikki had done. Arasuin was not the type who could disregard personal distance like that. Taking a napkin, he gently wiped the cream from Shizuku's soft cheek. NNN. Okay, got it. Your face is soft like a baby's, Shizuku. I'm jealous. You're like a big sister, Alice. Big sister, me. Yep, I was thinking that I want a big sister like you. My goodness, is that a request for me to marry Ikki and be your sister-in-law? Huh. Sorry, I went too far. Knowing that he had stepped on a landmine, Arasuin reflected on how Shizuku would not take any jokes about Ikki. Even if it's you, Alice, Oni-sama is off limits. That's right, because Ikki belongs to you. Not really, I don't think so. In that instant, Shizuku's face darkened, and those timid words came out. Shizuku. In concern, Arasuin tried to guess what had happened. At his gaze, Shizuku closed her eyes. Hey Alice, there's something I want to ask. Part 3. Shizuku spoke her honest feelings. Alice, you know, I was very happy today. Stella-san acknowledged Oni-sama in front of everyone. Nobody's ever done that before. No one has looked at him straight on and recognized how wonderful he is. Shizuku was referring the fight between the worst one and the hunter. During that official match, the worst one had fallen to his lowest depths, and from the spectator stands, Stella had made one loud rebuke to everyone else's jeers, bringing him back to life. Without fear over public opinion, Stella had affirmed Ikki Kuragane's convictions. That had never happened before to Ikki, who was disavowed by his own blood relatives. Shizuku recognized her brother's worth more than anyone and wanted others to appreciate it as well, so she was glad. But I think Oni-sama was very happy hearing Stella's words. Shizuku remembered Ikki's face. She had never seen him like that before. No matter how much she praised him, she had never given him the same joy. She was glad for him, but she also realized the limits of a little sister. No matter how much she thought of him, he only saw her as a relative. She could not become the girl he loved. Oni-sama has always had bitter memories and was raised without love from anyone, so I want to love him a lot. I want to give him happiness. That's what I've always thought. The most important thing is Oni-sama's happiness. So, you know, if Oni-sama is happy, if Stella-san would make Oni-sama happier than I could, She would have to step aside. Before those lethal words could escape Shizuku's lips. Shizuku. Arasuin's long and slender index finger touched them. Alice. You don't have to force yourself to say it. I know how you feel. Saying so, Arasuin moved his index finger to the corner of her eye and gently wiped away the small droplet that was there. You've been thinking over this for a while, haven't you? Shizuku nodded heavily. If Stella could make her brother happier, would she have to step aside? Would she have to give up on her brother's romantic love? After seeing that match, this question sat in the back of her heart. Yes, there were many conflicting feelings inside of her. Happiness that someone else appreciates her brother, and complicated feelings about a girl who would be Ikki's one and only. She loved Ikki as his blood relative and as someone of the opposite sex, and so it was a dilemma. Now Shizuku was confused about what path she must take, but at Shizuku's question, Arasuin did not give a definite answer. Quite a very difficult question, isn't it? Honestly, this depends on your feelings. The correct path isn't something anyone else can lead you to. I guess so. Suddenly, Arasuin's tone changed. But there are 2 things I can definitely say. 2 things. Yes. What were they? Seeing Shizuku's questioning expression, Arasuin smiled gently. That in this world, the one who loves Ikki the most and the most deeply is you. And a woman who won't spend all her strength to steal Ikki away from you doesn't deserve to have him. What path you choose is up to you. But your feelings, your love, are no doubt real and you don't have to give that up. Instead, be more honest with your feelings and act on your love as you know it and want to. Every girl has that right. Arasuin's words pierced Shizuku's heart. Ah, that's true. Her heart gave a single answer, that there was no reason to give up. There was no need to sacrifice her romantic feelings for her brother's happiness. It was obvious that Shizuku could not entrust her brother to any woman with lesser devotion. So, there was no need to yield. Were Stella's feelings strong enough to brush Shizuku's aside and take Ikki for herself? Shizuku's sincerity gleamed like a gemstone. Was Stella's bright enough to outshine it? The only one who could test that was Shizuku herself. I'll find out. I'll go as deep as I have to. Whether Stella-san can make Oni-sama happier than I can. In reaching that conclusion, Shizuku's heart became unchained. Part 4. Alice, thanks. Shizuku's face was beaming, and Arasuin smiled slightly, inwardly marveling at the thought that she had found some answer. How amazing, to love someone so deeply. She could love her brother to the point of giving up her own precious feelings. Arasuin could no longer do such a thing. To love other people, to love any human, that was something beyond him now. All I can do is keep up appearances. A crow among swans. He could neither feel goodwill nor open his heart, and so he considered her feelings precious. He did not want to see them disappear. I'm needlessly sentimental, aren't I? Maybe it was the alcohol. A tiny self-ridiculing smile appeared, and Arasuin swallowed the last remaining mouthful from his tumbler. Okay, it's about time for us to get going, I think. But there was no response when he looked toward Shizuku at his side. Thump. She fell gently on his right arm. Zay. My oh my. She had finally fallen. The tension she had fretted over disappeared once she found her conclusion. With no other choice, Arasuin settled the bill, put Shizuku's small body on his back, and left the shop. Shizuku was as light as a feather, so she was no burden at all. Oh, Nig-sama. Perhaps in her dreams it was her brother carrying her. Murmuring so, she clung tighter. Sheesh, what a terrible man you are, Ikki. Arasuin suddenly looked up at the stars shining in the sky and made a single wish. He wished that this gentle girl's hopes would conclude in the happiest way. References. Up Era. Host Club. A nighttime entertainment club with primarily male staff catering to female customers. Up Era. Macallan whiskey, a single malt Scotch whiskey. Up Era. Star Black Circle R's, Star Wars, a science fiction series created by George Lucas. The Jedi are a fellowship of knights with mystical powers. Intermission. Shizuku-chan's way too admirable. She really does love Ikki, doesn't she? By the way, Alice-chan, was it around this time that you started to turn away from rebellion? I suppose so. It's something I felt deep inside. Seeing someone so admirable, it stokes one's motherly feelings, wouldn't it? As expected of you, very straight arrow, anyway. Let's get to the next event. It's relatively new and pretty recent. Senpai became top tier in the Hagun Academy rankings and crushed our student council president and quarter-finalist champion Tauka Taudu. He was out of action from fatigue for a week, and during that time, Stella-chan and Shizuku-chan had a match of their own. Oh, that did happen. Being the instigator, of course you'll remember easily. But I didn't really play a part, so I don't have much of the details either. Well, for you and for our readers, your reporter Kagami interviewed hard. Get the full story, okay? Now then, event number 3, Deathmatch. Crimson Princess vs Lorelei. Chapter 3, Deathmatch. Crimson Princess vs Lorelei. Part 1. The Crimson Princess and the Worst One were in a relationship. During the latter half of the school selection battles, the schemes of the ethics committee created a public scandal and an uproar. But after the Worst One's victory and a statement from the King of the Vermilion Empire, the tide shifted just as quickly. And yet, not all of the problems were solved. One such problem was the subject of worry for the tall and fair-faced young man named Nagi Arasuin. Standing before the door of his dormitory room, Arasuin let out a small sigh. What am I going to do? Well, just worrying won't solve it. Arasuin turned the doorknob and stepped inside to see the scene he was expecting arrayed before him. Though it was noon, the curtains were drawn closed and the room was in total darkness. Clothes were scattered wildly about and books were strewn all over. On the bed was a junk pile of plastic bottles and candy wrappers. And in the middle of the rubbish scattered so thoroughly that there was nowhere to walk. I love you, Shizuku. Even if I go to Venice, I want you by my side, attached to my heart like Velcro. Heh. Yes, of course, Issei-san, you horrid copy of Oni-sama. Hovering near the television screen's pale and ghostly radiance, Shizuku sat in a track jersey, muttering to herself. Shizuku, are you still playing Private Prince Academy? Oh, you're back. Hee, this game's very interesting. It's not good, but it has its merits, right? Though honestly, it should just disappear. Shizuku's eyes looking back toward Arasuin were so dull that he could hardly tell whether she was actually seeing him. Arasuin could only give a stiff smile. But you're not going on any route besides Issei's. Of course not. None of the other worms resemble Oni-sama. Well, this Issei only has Oni-sama's appearance too, but for a worthless little sister who Oni-sama didn't choose, it all works out, don't you think? Hehehe. This is terrible. Arasuin drew back slightly at Shizuku's lifeless smile and speech, and the way her head creaked as it turned. This was the leftover problem that Arasuin was fretting about. The shock of Ikki and Stella declaring their love for everyone to hear had sent Shizuku off the rails. In concrete terms, she no longer maintained her personal grooming or kept the room clean, and now she was cutting class to play a video game. To his knowledge, she had played the same character route 20 times. For Arasuin, this was more than an extreme annoyance as her roommate, because the aura of defeat radiating from Shizuku's whole body was wrecking her physical condition too. Didn't you already know all about their relationship? Yes, I was aware. But in the end, you can't endure hearing it from their own mouths. That's not true. If it makes Oni-sama happy, I don't mind if Stella-san is at his side instead of me. Your words and your behavior don't match at all. Leave me alone. Even if I become a dried fish while Oni-sama and Stella-san happily go off to do this and that, it doesn't matter to you, right? Shizuku looked away from Arasuin pointedly and went back to her game. Her bowed back showed how deeply her heart was wounded. Well, that's natural. Arasuin was always watching Shizuku, so he knew how wholeheartedly the girl loved Ikki. Of course, she must have been ready for the revelation that her brother and Stella had become a couple without anyone else knowing. She had always tolerated the two of them being together. But now that the day had come, the sudden feeling of emptiness, defeat, and jealousy, the weight of loss must have overwhelmed her resignation. It must be a heavy truth to accept. But lacking any choice, Shizuku had convinced herself that this was the result her brother chose. Making her brother Ikki happy was Shizuku's desire, and if Shizuku loved him unconditionally, she would not find fault in this. But no, two emotions ran through Shizuku's mind. The more important was Ikki's happiness. The partner he chose was someone she had to accept. Yet, affection had grown stronger and stronger in her heart over the years, and no matter how hopeless it was, she could not simply discard it. She could not reconcile these two feelings, and the reality of it was crushing her. Maybe you could call that strength. Maybe she could be happier if she forgot these emotions, but Arasuin knew as he gazed at Shizuku's back that she could not do so. Or more accurately, even knowing they would never be requited, Shizuku had no intention of abandoning her feelings for her brother, and so she was now suffering. Arasuin loved Shizuku for this. Shizuku, who loved Ikki wholeheartedly no matter what happened, was someone he respected, but even so. Leaving her alone is a bit pitiful, isn't it? It was hard to see Shizuku like this, and coming back to a room hit by a typhoon was displeasing. I have to lift her mood a little. But there was no point in consoling her. No one could match Ikki in her heart, so Arasuin did not think there were any words he could say to fill the hole there. Instead of comfort, Arasuin gave Shizuku a small provocation. Well, I'll leave you alone if that's what you'd like, but all things considered, I'm a bit surprised you're accepting Stella-san so easily. What do you mean? Well, you're fine with Stella-san as your precious brother's spouse. Oni-sama chose her. At Arasuin's somewhat mocking tone, Shizuku replied with a voice that did not hide her sullenness. Whether she herself acknowledged the partner her brother chose was irrelevant. But to Shizuku's response, Arasuin smiled with ill-hidden guile. "Oh my, I wonder if that's enough." Shizuku did not seem to understand, so he continued. "If mutual love always ends in happy marriages, then would there be divorces?" "What are you saying?" was Arasuin's deeply meaningful tone, pointing out something curious. Shizuku turned her entire body around to ask Arasuin, and he answered. "Many people love blindly, and those who do aren't usually clear-headed about their partner's faults, right? Especially Ikki, who's had a hard enough life that his common sense is warped and he's too trusting of others. I wonder if Stella-chan is fitting as his spouse. Can she clean and keep house? Can she make meals properly? To judge matters like these, rather than the person himself, wouldn't the role be better taken by someone more objective, like a mother-in-law or a blood relative?" Arasuin's words were half sincere, half deceptive. What he personally thought was that like and dislike were issues for the people in question. He was not keen on nettlesome words from bystanders, and besides, Ikki and Stella's situation was one where Stella had the greater ability to choose. After all, the Kurogane clan was a famous family in Japan, but she was a princess. But Arasuin deliberately avoided saying this for Shizuku's sake. The role he suggested was all she could do for her most beloved brother, and he felt she needed it to cling to at this moment. "That's true." Shizuku's heart ignited at Arasuin's words. The haze over her eyes cleared, replaced by an emerald gleam. That's right, you're completely right." This was indeed a blood relative's duty, and only Shizuku, who loved Ikki from the bottom of her heart, could fulfill it. Her capricious other brother and her scornful father were both out of the question. If she herself didn't do it, for her brother. "I have to make sure Stella-san can make Oni-sama happy." Shizuku shot up like she was about to fly. Her eyes shined with strength, and her face glowed with vitality. Not only did she not have to give up on her brother, she could act for his benefit. "Thanks, Alice. Now I know what to do." "You're in good spirits, and that's most important." Arasuin smiled in relief. Well, it was a temporary restoration, since the fact that those two were a couple now would not change. But if Shizuku could do this and find acceptance for Stella, her heart might lighten a little. Arasuin prayed for something like that to happen. Sure, it might put quite some trouble on Stella, but it was for the girl who would be her future sister-in-law, so she should be willing to pitch in and help. Part 2. Despite having been full of heavy feelings and not moving around much for the last few days, Shizuku acted quickly after getting back up. She immediately changed clothes, then left the room to find Stella and confirm whether Stella was suitable as her brother's sweetheart. Arasuin, following along, spoke in astonishment at this vigor. "I said there's no time like the present, but I didn't think you would start so suddenly. It'd be better to finish something like this while Oni-sama is asleep, wouldn't you say?" "That's true, but have you thought about how you would test Stella-san?" Shizuku nodded grandly at Arasuin's question. "Yes, that's for certain. I knew what I would do instantly." "Oh, and what did you come up with?" "As you'd said, whether she can clean and keep house. She's a princess, so I'm sure she's been brought up living an easy life. If I don't check for myself, Oni-sama might end up living in trash. And cooking too, can she do it? I'll never accept a wife who can't even hand-make a delicious meal for her husband." Certainly, those 2 points are vital. Especially cooking. A beloved wife's cooking was not the sort of thing that can be done by a servant or compensated for by housekeeping skill. Speaking of which... Suddenly, Arasuin asked Shizuku about a troubling matter. "By the way, can you cook, Shizuku?" "Of course. Maybe not to the extent of Stella-san's family, but ours is also famous. I've learned from our staff." "Oh, then they're quite high quality as far as that goes." "Yes, the reputation of the people of the house is superb. One review said, 'It was so delicious I was like in a trance. Moreover, just by eating I managed to lose 30 kilos. I'm so blessed.' She was this pampered growing up." "Did you say something?" "The food must have been very healthy if one can lose weight eating it." Hee hee, isn't it? I'll treat you next time. Wow. Anyway, I'd like to have the room to myself for today. Is that okay? That's fine. I suppose I'll trouble Kagamin to let me stay in her room. I'm sorry. It's all right. I was the one who brought it up in the first place. And with that, the two decided their separate destinations. At the moment, they had reached where they believed Stella was at, one of the hospital rooms established for the academy. It was 4 days after the final decisive battle with Rikiri. Due to the consequences from using Idu Razetsu during that battle, and the cowardly interference from the ethics committee before it, Ikki's physical condition had collapsed, and he had not yet woken up. Stella was definitely watching over him today as well. Well then, let's call Stella out. Wait. Suddenly, Shizuku held back Arasuin, who had one hand on the door. What's wrong? This doesn't happen often, so I wanted to see whether Stella-san is watching over Oni-sama properly. That's certainly important too. Stella was no professional caretaker, but if she could not nurse Ikki as a family member would, her suitability as wife was nil. A mother-in-law would consider this something that must be confirmed. Though having said that, Stella had also nursed Ikki devotedly after the battle with the hunter, so she probably already passes. Thinking this, the two of them stealthily opened the door to Ikki's hospital room, and there. Thanks for the feast. With cheeks dyed red, Stella appeared to be pressing her lips onto the unconscious Ikki's own. In an instant, Arasuin felt the temperature around him plunging below freezing, and he turned toward Shizuku, but it was already too late. With a reflex speed that rivaled marginal counter, Shizuku formed bullets of ice. Die. Why, what an assassin. Giving Arasuin no chance to restrain her, Shizuku began to shoot through the door at Stella like a machine gun. Part 3. What were you doing all of a sudden? Anyone else would be dead, you know. After the battle, physical calm fell back over Ikki's hospital room, disturbed only by Stella's roars of rage, while she pulled needles of ice from her forehead, and Shizuku's answers in a wild voice, while her eyebrows stood raised. And you, what were you doing to Oni-sama? What part of that was proper nursing? And no, I was just checking his fever, by his forehead. Don't make such a lame excuse. This is a sick room. There are thermometers, right? That's right, Shizuku. This is a sick room, so be a bit quieter, okay? GRR. Arasuin pointed at the door, which was punched full of holes. Past the holes, the bloodshot eyes of a school nurse stared at the three of them. Shizuku and Stella had damaged school property on their first school day and got suspended, so of course they would best not repeat that. Shizuku lowered her voice glumly and turned a resentful gaze toward Stella. Now I've been shamed because of a certain lewd person. Don't call me lewd. What else would you call a woman who does obscene things to Oni-sama while he's unconscious? Oh, obscene. Ikki and I are a couple, so kissing's expected. That's right, like a greeting. Yeah. Who's a couple, who? Didn't you already accept us? Stella's face showed surprise. She was probably thinking of their previous talk in the dining room. Back when Ikki was apprehended by the ethics committee, Shizuku had heard from Stella directly about the two having a relationship, but Shizuku said she had long known and did not complain. Yet Shizuku now shook her head. I only said that I knew you two had that relationship. I haven't said a single word about accepting it, and I haven't the slightest intent on doing so either. That's not fair. Not true. Flatly denying Stella's accusation, Shizuku decided now was the time to broach the topic of her business today. But since I'm an adult, not debauched like a certain someone, I'll conduct a test for whether you, Stella-san, can truly make Oni-sama happy, and whether you deserve to be his spouse. T-test. Yes, unless you can produce results that satisfy me, I'll absolutely never recognize you as Oni-sama's lover. Stella did not get on board with Shizuku's proposal. What a joke. Why do I have to do something like this? Ikki and I have already decided our feelings. It has nothing to do with whether you accept me or not. It was probably an unnecessary bother for a girl in her position, But these words were not well chosen. To claim that Shizuku had nothing to do with issues that involve Ikki, that was pressing a button indeed. Oh, stealing away my Oni-sama, and you say it has nothing to do with me. The temperature of the room plunged yet again, but even colder was Shizuku's voice. Even though I'm Oni-sama's sister that always thinks of him and loves him more than anyone else, you say it has nothing to do with me. Hers was a voice devoid of life's warmth, like that of a specter speaking from the Chthonian depths. Even Stella was pressed back. That's right. What's most important is the feelings of the people in question. She rallied and replied so without backing down, but that bluff only lasted a moment. I see, if you're confident then so be it. Pay no mind to me and continuing insisting on being Oni-sama's lover. But now, I'll definitely destroy your relationship with him. No matter where you flee on this earth, no matter what I have to do, I'll absolutely tear your happiness to shreds. And not just your current happiness either. After all, if you're going to carry off Oni-sama without my consent, wouldn't it be better to just kill me here and now, Stella-san? You ugh. Shizuku's tone was dispassionate and certain, as if laying out a simple truth, as if passing down a death penalty. At the unmistakably true hatred there, Stella folded. Fine, I get it. It's fine if you do your test, right? A sweet, forced smile appeared on Shizuku's face. I think that's a wise choice. But Stella did not simply capitulate to Shizuku's demand. She pointed at Shizuku and made a single counter-demand. Then if I pass this test, you'll accept me and Ikki being together. Promise you won't hover over us anymore. Shizuku went quiet. If she agreed, and by some chance Stella succeeded, she would have no choice but to accept Stella as a suitable partner for her brother. But if she did not agree, Stella would likely not take the test. After all, Stella had no reason to accept a match that could only conclude in defeat or the status quo. Very well. I doubt I'll be made to accept a lecher who can't even nurse a patient properly. Having no choice, Stella agreed to Stella's condition with a calm and composed voice, but hostility raged, for no other reason than the previous spectacle she saw of the woman stealing her brother's lips. Unforgivable. I really can't leave Oni-sama to a girl like this. And in response, Stella's eyes burned with confidence as she declared. You said it. I'll have you regret taking the Vermilion Empire's second princess lightly. In this manner, the battle between these two in-laws, the Crimson Princess and Lorelei, sparked off. Part 4. Afterwards, Stella and Shizuku parted from Arasuin, going toward the arena of Shizuku's dormitory room. During the walk, Stella asked a natural question. By the way, what exactly is your test going to be? A fight? Why should it be that? Are you a barbarian? Shizuku's response was so disgusted that Stella's face reddened. At least call me a knight. This is a test of whether you're suitable to be Oni-sama's spouse. It only makes sense that I'm looking for skill in homemaking, right? But once we return to the Imperial Palace, the maids will take care of all that. That may be true, but a slovenly woman who leaves everything to others and has no skills of her own is one I'll never accept as Oni-sama's spouse. GRR. Stella made a bluntly discontented face at Shizuku's words, but not because she was a slovenly woman. Shizuku would probably not understand, but Stella's circumstances was born from the imperial family's own. Doing everything by themselves would deprive jobs to those who serve the palace, an act that would even offend the public. As one who employed those workers, Stella was not enthusiastic about it. But she did understand Shizuku's point. A woman should be able to do some bit of housework. After all, wife is written as woman plus home, right? 1. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. If this country's custom was for women to do such work, then she would follow along. Just as Stella settled her emotions, the two of them arrived at Shizuku's room. Now, let's begin the test immediately. Saying this, Shizuku opened the door. Well, what happened here? Books had been flung from their shelves like in the aftermath of an earthquake, and clothes were scattered from dressers like a volcano had erupted. A layer of junk food wrappers and plastic water bottles topped everything in a disaster zone that made onlookers want to shield their eyes. Do you and Alice always live like this? Such rudeness. I scattered things about for your test on purpose, that's all. First, show me your skill in cleaning by tidying this place up. You're just using this test as an excuse to have me clean up for you, right? How could that be true? Look me in the eye. Seeing Shizuku's face remained turned toward the distant future, Stella was convinced her hunch was correct. Well, fine. So I should just gather up the garbage, put away the clothes and books, and make the room nice, right? Yes, but not just making it nice in an ordinary sense. What do you mean? There's time limit of 20 minutes. You want me to clean up this room in 20? Yes, tidying up and removing the trash, of course, and also vacuuming and wiping everything down. Stella looked over Shizuku's room again, a room so cluttered she could not see the beds. Just putting the clothes and books away will take that long. You're not giving me enough time to do vacuuming or wiping. But Shizuku spurned this protest. It takes skill to solve this problem, and speed and quality is where that skill comes in. Otherwise, cleaning is something even children do, so of course you'll get it done. I have a feeling you're not one of the children who can do it. You can keep making tedious comments if you like, but the timer's already started, so you should get going. Shizuku took out her student datapad from her skirt pocket. Displayed on it was the stopwatch with 20 minutes already set, and was now moving. Gah. Though Stella knew that this country's ideal involved bearing one's burdens and pushing one's way through difficulty, she had not expected to experience it like this. Is this the rumored Japanese tradition, the in-laws picking on the new wife? But it was a duel she accepted, and to back down would be a blot on the name of the Vermilion royal family. Fine, I'll do it. Saying so in a confident voice, Stella began to clean the room. Part 5. Stella chose to start by tidying up the books and clothes scattered about. After all, she would not be able to vacuum without doing that first. She quickly placed the books back on the shelves in volume order and folded the clothes neatly and put them away. Her skilled movements were fast and very thorough. However, is this kind of thoroughness good enough? 20 minutes, that was the problem. Furthermore, Shizuku wanted Stella to fail at the test, so there were traps, and Stella stumbled into one. Is this yours? She fell for it. Stella looked at the green cover of the photo album she had picked up, and Shizuku snickered. Oh my, what could that be? Was I so irresponsible that I dropped something this important under the bed? You did take better care of a childhood album. No, that's not mine. It's Oni-sama's from his elementary school years. Stella's body jolted, as if she had been pierced by lightning. Such a precious photo collection, the only one of its kind. I was going to keep it as a treasure for me alone, but what a blunder. Hiki's pictures as a child. Yes, of Oni-sama in his gym uniform and swimming trunks, of him sleeping at noon with his belly button exposed, and many other pictures of my cute Oni-sama. Alas, you found it, so I guess I can let you look inside this once. I can. Yes, go ahead, but the timer won't stop. Yes, this was Shizuku's trap. Inside this album were images of the young Ikki that Stella did not know. She could not escape her interest. She wanted it desperately. But that was why the trap was effective. Oh, but if you're not going to look, please give it to me instead of putting it on the bookshelf. It's my treasure, so I have to hide it where no one else can find it again. Uwu. Stella let out a moan at her weakness being so perfectly targeted. Gah, that's Shizuku. She's really shooting for my loss here, isn't she? After all, the 20-minute limit was harsh. Even with Stella's plan, her pace would only let her finish just in time. She could not squeeze in an extra second. But Ikki as a child in gym uniform, swimsuit, belly button. I wanna see. She wanted it desperately. Ikki was not the sort to bring his childhood photos to the dormitory, so she had never known such things. What kind of child had he been? A cute boy with an adult air? Or would he be a rascal with bandages stuck on his face? Her imagination veered just from the suggestion, but, why, you fiend? Forcing back the magma-like desire rising from the depths of her heart, Stella threw the album at Shizuku. Shizuku caught it deftly and gave a bullying smile. "Oh ho, are you sure? You don't want to look inside. You won't have another chance." "No thanks. An able wife won't be distracted from her cleaning." "That's quite a lot of drooling there." "This is sweat." It seemed some of the magma had emerged. Wiping it off with a forearm, Stella went back to the cleaning. She discerned the trap just now, and that Shizuku had seriously tried to make her fail. She could not fall again. "I can't be doing as you want." Stella, burning with inner fire, began cleaning the room even more efficiently than before. And at last, she finished tidying up the scattered books and clothing that left nowhere in the room to stand. Seeing this efficiency, even Shizuku the judge groaned a little. Or rather, she's more capable than I expected, I guess. Stella's efficiency and love of cleanliness was no different from Shizuku's roommate Arasuin. Shizuku had seen Stella as someone crude, so this was a surprise. That Stella did not look in the album was also something Shizuku had to reassess. But she can't finish in 20 minutes. 20 seconds left. No matter what you do, it looks like game over. You finished putting away the clothes and books, but you haven't done any of the vacuuming and wiping. We can't call this success. But that was inevitable. When she asked Arasuin, who held cleaning as a specialty, about how long tidying up the room would take, he said no less than 30 minutes. Shizuku had originally intended to set the time limit at 30 minutes, but she could not forget that attempt at a kiss. The crime had stoked the recently cooled fire within Shizuku, stealing the lips of her beloved brother. There would be no easy forgiveness. Only Shizuku alone could do such a thing, minus 10 points right off. Stella never had a chance. "Don't I still have 20 seconds? Stella, still not giving up, went toward the vacuum cleaner standing by the window. But not anymore. 5, 4, 3, 2. Shizuku counted down heartlessly, and at that moment, Stella moved in a surprising way. Without taking the vacuum cleaner, she opened the window, and yak. A fiery wind erupted from her body and burned away the room in an instant. Well, only the dust and trash inside. The thin ash of the burned garbage turned to flame that flew out the window Stella had opened, scattering into the wind and vanishing. The stopwatch alarm sounded at the same time, and Stella turned to Shizuku with a proud expression. "Well, there's not a bit of rubbish or germs left in the room. You don't any complaints, right?" To think she'd burn away the trash and dust with her flame. How preposterous. Shizuku had not thought of this display of power, and she made a bitter face. Yes, clearing away the trash and dust all at once meant no need for vacuuming and wiping. But to call the skill in cleaning would be. For blazers, mundane skill and mundane use of power is the same. How is it different from vacuuming by hand? MMRGH. She had no answer. She should have started off by ruling that no powers would be used. Feeling the pain of causing her own downfall, Shizuku nodded sourly. "WL, let's call it a passing mark." HMPH, fine. She only made it through one test. Stella had not attained total victory. There would be other, more essential and difficult tests after all. Part 6. Without allowing for even time to take a breath, Shizuku spoke to Stella. "Well, since the room's been cleaned up, the next test. Did you say anything about more tests?" "The next topic is cooking, the most important of skills. Meals filled with a wife's love are special, and the work of others are no substitute. Nothing needs to be said about women who can't cook. Yes, cleaning ability is nothing to boast about. It can be left to a maid." "That's not what you said before." "What do you mean? Anyway, cooking is the most vital, so I'll have you make dinner." Stella was burning with complaints at Shizuku's shameless pretense of ignorance, but she held it in. There was no point, and anyway it was already dinner time, so her stomach was feeling empty. Fine, but what are the ingredients? You may use whatever's in the refrigerator. We have many kinds of seasonings, so employ them as you like. Seasonings were already lined up in the kitchen, Shizuku pointed to. Salt and pepper, soy sauce and mirin, salad oil, and so on. The popular flavorings were well represented. You're stocked up on that, but do you have any requirements? None. Think over what to use on your own. It's part of the assessment. Okay, that's how it is. Then let's check the ingredients. Do you have meat? Of course. Let me see. First, what meat was available? Chicken, pork, beef. Without knowing that, one could not put together a meal, so Stella looked at the top shelf of the refrigerator first. She opened the chilled compartment, but there was only a single pack of fish paste cake, placed as if it was an offering in some shrine. Shizuku. What is it? Don't what is, it me. There's nothing in here except a tube of fish paste. Fish is meat. Isn't the use for it too limited? In exchange, the vegetables section is quite full, so you'll be fine. Healthy eating is important. I can't bring out my strength without meat. Stella's body required vast fuel consumption. She could not exert strength without food high in calories, protein, and fat. For her, this was healthy, so this was frankly a task that damped her spirit. But she had no choice except work with the fish paste cake, so Stella glumly reached for the vegetable drawer. It's heavy. You really do have a lot in here, huh? She pulled out the drawer with a bit more force. It was certainly overflowing to the point of being stuck, and it was nothing but potatoes. Shizuku. What's wrong? It should be full. It is, but only with potatoes. Thinking up a wonderful menu on a limited selection of ingredients is also a wife's job. Too limited? How many menus are you saying you can make with only fish paste and potato? And you have sprouting ones in here. Well done, seeing through that trap. Do you think I'm an idiot? It was a joke. There are other vegetables underneath. After some digging, Stella found that indeed there were carrots and onions, peas and other things. Just show me these from the start. Psychological attacks are fundamental. Sheesh, I'm exhausted before I even start cooking. Fed up with Shizuku's plain, if futile harassment, Stella took out the ingredients and lined them up. Well, with this, I could make a standard meat and potato stew, I guess, even if I only have fish paste instead of meat. Since there was miso among the seasonings, making miso soup and thus going one dish one soup would probably not draw complaints. Stella immediately decided on this meal and began working. She skillfully peeled the skins from the potatoes and carrots, then cut them to bite-sized pieces. Seeing her skill, Shizuku muttered darkly. So you're not just good at cutting people, Don't say things that give people the wrong impression. It's hard to believe, but are you good at cooking? At the question, Stella's lips twitched. How long have you thought that I was bad at it? What are you saying? For the second imperial princess, being married is like a job. I've been training to be a bride since childhood. Cooking is one of my strongest points, both Eastern and Western cooking. As if proving those words, Stella finished prepping the vegetables in the blink of an eye and began cooking the potatoes and miso soup. Shizuku scowled at this display of Stella's high feminine skill. But this is within my expectations. The previous test had already opened Shizuku's eyes, and she was already thinking of countermoves. I see. I understand that cooking is a forte of yours, but it's not enough, is it? Stella frowned at the sudden comment. What do you mean? You're not doing enough. As a new wife, I'll have you change into appropriate attire. That's part of the task. Attire. This. Saying so, Shizuku took something out. It was a cute, fluttery apron, and upon seeing it, Stella realized that she was not wearing an apron herself. Oh, an apron. True, I don't want to get my school uniform dirty. Thanks. Stella reached for the apron in Shizuku's hand, but Shizuku pulled it back with a swish. What kind of misunderstanding are you having? Where in the world would a new wife put on a normal apron? For them, there's only the naked apron. That's common sense. W.A. Stella screamed at this, as one would expect. Does Vermilion's bridal education not teach this? Of course not, and I've never heard of this as common sense in Japan either. Stella roared back with face red as if spitting fire, but Shizuku expected this reaction, and she calmly activated her student datapad to show Stella the display. Guwoggle, naked apron. About 925,000 results. TH. It's common enough sense that Guwoggle says so all over the world. As something so stupid is. That being the case, I don't intend to acknowledge a woman who's unwilling to even wear the naked apron and make Oni-sama happy. If you can't do this, you may as well bow out. Ooh. Seeing the apron being thrust out at her, Stella's face cramped up. How could a culture expect someone to wear this bit of cloth in the kitchen? Stella shuddered in realization of humanity's depravity. Her front would be fine, but her rear would have a fatal lack of concealment. And while she was cooking in the kitchen, Shizuku would be facing her back and definitely see all of it. The prideful imperial princess of Vermilion could not show such a thing to others. But this was a one-strike battle. She would regret giving up. With cooking in her realm of expertise, she had confidence in making a meal beyond Shizuku's reproach. Since Shizuku would clash with her no matter what she did, she wanted to prove her superiority here. That's right, Ikki would go this far for me. Against the ethics committee, he had stood strong to proclaim his love for her. Remembering this, Stella steeled her resolve. Fine, I'll put it on. We're both girls, so there's nothing embarrassing about it. Part 7. Stripping off her clothes forcefully, Stella started cooking wearing nothing but the apron. This state of affairs was as embarrassing as expected, leaving Stella to move her body with intense concentration so she did not have to think about the situation. Had she looked back, she would have seen that Shizuku behind her was also red in the cheeks. TH, this is more amazing than I imagined. After all, Shizuku saw all of Stella's back, the part that the apron was not hiding. Stella's physique was clearly different from a Japanese person's, with standoffishly and audaciously firm buttocks. They were the same sex, but the sight was so sensual that it gave Shizuku vertigo. I think this is going a bit far, but the point is I made her uncomfortable, right? Shizuku's tactic was not to disqualify Stella by demanding the naked apron. Stella would obviously not be ashamed to the point of abandoning the match. This harassment was a smokescreen, a means to divert her concentration. Her performance was good, but she was clearly not focused on cooking. In that case, she'll definitely fall into my trap. So Shizuku waited and the moment came. Stella was flavoring the potatoes. In making something equivalent to meat and potato stew, she added sake, mirin, soy sauce, and sugar. Seeing this, Shizuku thought, got her. She was sure that Stella would fail this test. After adding the seasoning, Stella covered the pot and let it stew for 5 minutes. Okay, well, there's no way I made a mistake, but I should sample a bit, I guess. Stella also noticed her error. In the instant that the ladle of stew she raised to her mouth touched taste buds, her eyes widened. A strange saltiness had exploded on her tongue. PTHHH, what is this? Why is it salty? The question erupted from her mouth unintentionally, but there was only one imaginable reason. Meat and potato stew was a recipe in which the saltiness from the soy sauce was balanced against the sweetness of the sugar. What would make the saltiness this extreme was impossible. Did I confuse the salt and sugar? But Stella immediately doubted that. No, there's no way. I used the container that had sugar written on it. Then why? Stella was bewildered. Oh my, Stella-san, what's wrong? From behind her, Shizuku's voice rang out. Her voice somehow seemed to contain a smile, and Stella realized the truth. Did she? Stella dipped into the jar of seasoning that had sugar written in marker on the side, and tasted what came out. I knew it. There's salt in the jar with sugar written on it. Indeed, Stella had not mistaken one jar for the other. The content had been wrongly labeled from the beginning. Shizuku, you put something else in this on purpose, didn't you? Not at all, not at all. How could I do that? You're lying. No, I wouldn't. But was it really mixed up somehow? If that's all, you could have noticed the difference if you paid proper attention, right? We can only say that this happened because you weren't being careful, I guess. This girl... She had not thought Shizuku would go so far. Stella knew how much Shizuku loved Ikki. Shizuku was never going to acknowledge someone else as Ikki's partner. If I was in her place, I'd definitely. So this much was expected, and in order to make Shizuku approve of her, she had to accept all Shizuku's obstructions to ensure Shizuku could not refuse to give that approval. Shizuku, this is a test of cooking, so all I need to do is make something delicious, right? Of course. And a meat and potato soup that has both salt and soy sauce, salty enough to make the eater pop a blood vessel, would very much not pass. Sure. But as long as it ends up good, that's all that matters, right? She smiled meaningfully. She would still recover. Then I'll do this. Stella took out the soba noodles from the pot and threw away everything else, including the soup. Tossing the soup, what are you trying to do? HMPH, just keep watching. Dropping the remaining ingredients into the pot, Stella crushed them with full strength. She also retrieved a large number of potatoes from the refrigerator, and under hot water she crushed them the same way, making pulpy mashed potatoes. Seeing this process, Shizuku also figured out her plan. It can't be this is, croquettes. Yep, if I change the recipe to croquettes that use more potatoes, it'll take away from the saltiness. Even though the existing potatoes and other vegetables had absorbed too much salt, rendering them to a pulpy paste and increasing the number of potatoes would dilute the salinity. By changing the recipe on the fly, Stella had torn through Shizuku's trap. Your claws aren't sharp enough, Shizuku. You would have been better off using poison. There was an escape. Shizuku had not imagined such quick-wittedness. Seeing this difference in skill that left her with no excuses to make, even she was at a loss for words. Part 8. Having broken out of Shizuku's trap, Stella lined up her handmade vegetable croquette meal on the dining table. There, it's done. Why don't you go ahead and judge it? Keiko. Shizuku groaned at Stella's brimming confidence. The croquettes before her eyes had an appearance no one would think was once the failed result of a different recipe. But even so, it came from a failure, so there's no way it could be tasty. Munch. Thinking so, she held onto that sliver of hope and put a croquette in her mouth. Lurg. Not only had Stella presented it with confidence, it was so delicious that none could judge it poorly. By thinning out those oversalted potatoes with unseasoned ones and reducing the saltiness with mixing, a perfectly balanced taste emerged. Newly added sugar and oil that soaked into the coating delighted the tongue. Having no meat was sad, but that was because Shizuku prepared none except for fish paste cake, so she had no cause for complaint. It looks like that's that for the test. Shizuku was silent for a short while in the face of Stella's boast of victory, but not yet. She squeezed out those words. MGH, hey now, you're being a sore loser. I passed all these tests of yours, so don't throw a tantrum, okay? I'm doing no such thing. This is the last one. Only one test left, the most important one. Indeed, this was not a tantrum. Cleaning, cooking, there was one crucial thing that was still not confirmed. But Shizuku was pained that it reached this stage, because if Stella answered her expectations here, everything would be decided. She would have no choice but to accept the girl in front of her. Well, since we've gone this far, I'll play along. What's next? Do I have to wash your back or something? No, it's nothing troublesome. All you have to do is answer a question. But there were no tests left, so Shizuku stifled her inner distress. Stella-san. Letting out a sigh, she looked toward Stella sitting on the other side of the table with a frightening earnestness entirely different from the slightly mocking expression she held during the tests, emitting enough force that Stella unconsciously sucked in a breath and put up her guard. What? Such a scary face. Stella-san, do you love Oni-sama more than I do? Can you make him happier than I can? Shizuku. At the question, Stella lost her voice. She knew how deeply Shizuku loved Ikki. That boy was kind and diligent, and by all rights should be loved, but the world did not do so. Shizuku was the one who defied this outrage. She was the one who filled her brother Ikki with affection in place of all those people, as a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, a friend, and a lover. Stella knew this, and now Shizuku was asking whether she loved Ikki more Shizuku did. Stella had no choice but to comprehend how conclusive a question this was. She could imagine the responsibility implied in answering. But understanding all of that, Stella had only a single answer. Sitting up straight, squaring her shoulders, she gazed into Shizuku's earnest eyes. Yes, absolutely. Clearly and distinctly, with a voice unclouded by confusion, she made that declaration with pure sincerity. There was none of the usual sparring tone. It was an answer of conviction. For a moment, Shizuku shut her eyes as if severing something inside of herself. Then, with a smile she had never shown Stella before, she said, "Please treat my brother well." And thus, the match between the Crimson Princess and Lorelei was settled. Part 9. The day ended at a late hour, so Stella stayed for the night in Shizuku's room. Softly, softly. At 2 in the morning, so deep at night that even plants were slumbering, Stella slipped silently from her lower bunk bed. Straightening up, she peeped at Shizuku above. Good, she's still asleep. Making sure that Shizuku was sleeping soundly, Stella rejoiced. What was she going to do, now that Shizuku's guard was down so deep in the night? That was answered by the item under the bed. I was watching you. Extending her hands, she drew out what was hidden underneath the bed, the splendid trap that Shizuku had laid during the cleaning test yesterday, Ikki Kuragane's childhood photo album. She had been waiting for her chance all night so that she could steal a glance. Ha. With her heart pounding, Stella gently opened the album, taking care not to let the pages make any noise. Inside was an uncountable number of photos Shizuku had taken of Ikki Kuragane as a child. Seikurie. Gentle eyes and slightly unkempt black hair. The ambience around him was entirely the same as the present, but his cheeks were red as apples, and his slender, naked, outstretched limbs exuded youth. Oh no, he's sleeping with his stomach bare. Such a cute sleeping face. Just like any child, his belly and cheeks were tender and relaxed. In sleepiness, his face and muscles could not help but be slack. But she must not just stare and grin. To enjoy this properly, she had to go back to her own room. I have to get a copy before Shizuku suspects. But as Stella tried to work her student datapad's camera function, ZNN. A sound descended from the upper bunk bed. No way did she wake up. In a rush, Stella closed the album, and clutching it to her side, she fearfully straightened up and peeked at Shizuku. Fortunately, Shizuku was not awake, but... Sob asterisk Oni-sama. Teardrops were budding out from tightly shut eyelids. Was she having painful dreams? No, Stella doubted that. She opened the album in her hands once again, and what she looked at this time was not the pictures of Ikki inside, but the album itself. The pages throughout were worn, as if they had been flipped over and over again. To Shizuku, Ikki was someone that irreplaceable. No matter how many times Stella demonstrated her qualifications or her readiness, there was no way the bond could be split. But even so, Shizuku said, "Please treat my brother well." She had wrung out those words, all for her brother's happiness. Now she was crying and shaking as if her body was freezing. Thinking of Shizuku's feelings, Stella let out a sigh at her own foolishness. Part 10. Morning came. My business has ended, so please go back to watching over Oni-sama. Shizuku, with a spiteful gaze, bade Stella leave her room with a wave of her hand as soon as she got up. Speaking so brazenly, she had no trace of the crying face from the previous night. Did it vanish so quickly? No, there's no way that could be true. Impossible. She must be putting on a front, so Stella did not complain at Shizuku's shamelessness. Okay, I get it. I'd be depressed too if I had to spend a lot of time with my sister-in-law. She stood up and opened the door. Oh my, Stella-chan, you're heading back. Alice. Having been driven out last night so that the two girls can have their examination, Arasuin bumped into Stella now. How did the test go? Did Stella-chan pass? Arasuin, who did not know anything about what had happened, asked this of Shizuku out of boundless interest. Shizuku was rather at a loss for words. After all, it was difficult to openly declare that she acknowledged her brother's lover. She knew this was only being selfish, though. Alice, But as Shizuku was about to force out the admission. About that, listen, Alice, you won't believe it. Pushing Shizuku's hesitation aside, Stella interrupted loudly. Shizuku switched the sugar and salt on purpose in order to set me up. And then she said I failed. I can't go on like this. Why? Shizuku's eyes widened in shock. Oh my, Shizuku, did you really? And no, I did do, but I didn't. She had not said that Stella failed, so Shizuku was greatly bewildered. What was Stella talking about? Did Shizuku dream everything that happened yesterday? But that's enough of that. If she still wants to refuse me, then whatever. No matter what I do, she'll never accept it, but I won't give up on Ikki either. I'll just take him away whether she lets me or not. These words allowed Shizuku to realize why Stella was lying. Stella was saying, behind her complaints, that there was no reason for Shizuku to give up on something hopeless. That it was fine for Shizuku to use all her strength to take Ikki back. That Stella was not going to refuse Shizuku this. This person. At the lie and the real intention behind it, Shizuku. Don't joke around. Gradually recovered a fearless smile that was more like herself. I'm the one who can make Oni-sama happiest in the world. I won't hand him over to you. HMPH, well, do what you want, you stubborn person. Leaving behind that insult, Stella slipped past Arasuin and went toward Ikki's hospital room. Watching Stella depart, Shizuku mumbled to Arasuin. Hey, Alice. What? I understand a little. Why Oni-sama loves her. Her voice was uneasy. Well, even though I don't approve. I don't really get it, but you're in good spirits, and that's most important. Arasuin smiled gently at Shizuku, now back to her full vigor. This was how Shizuku should be. Stella would probably agree. At noon on that day, Ikki finally woke back up, but he would probably never know what had transpired. References. Up era. Wife is written as woman plus home. Chinese letter is written as Chinese letter plus Chinese letter. Intermission. Now I kind of want to kiss Stella-chan. You'll be killed, I think. Ikki's the type who can draw a distinction between affection and friendship, you know. No, by Stella-chan. I guess I should hold off after all. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Anyway, it's been puzzling me for a while, but Kagaman, how'd you find out about this? If you dig into that, the Americans will put you 6 feet under. It'll be an intentional incident. Hey, let's leave off the risky questions and go to our next event. The Hagun Academy Wall newspaper special issue is moving on without delay. The next event happened after Senpai finally recovered from the exhaustion of the fight with Rikiri, right before everyone went off to the Kyomen training camp together. Senpai and Stella-chan solved a mystery together with the student council, a small matter behind the scenes at the academy. Have a look. Chapter 4, A Lady's Chivalry. Part 1. There was a certain boy, let's call him Boy A, who had 2 working parents. In the mornings, the 3 members of the family left for work and school at the same time, regularly enough that it was basically a family rule. But they didn't come back together. The dad's work involved a lot of overtime, and the mom had a part-time job as a supermarket cashier. Often both came home at around 8 at night, so it was Boy A who gets back first. He wasn't old enough for school clubs or cram school, so Boy A always went straight home. Even if he stopped by at a friend's house, curfew was at 6, so he'd never end up returning home later than his parents. Boy A would come home and take out the clothes his mom had put in the dryer that morning, or whatever. Then he'd wait alone in the brand new house, alone for hours until his parents arrived. That was his day. And on that day, like the rest, he waited. There was nobody else in the house. On that day, the wind was strong starting in the afternoon, blowing woo, almost like a typhoon. It was the chilly wind of winter, its fierce sound echoing in the two-story wooden house like the growl of some huge beast. Hearing that bleak and unending noise, the boy became strangely unsettled. He should already be used to watching over the place, but now being alone was suddenly dreadful. It was like a monster was growling and roaming just outside the walls, shaking the windows and trying to get in. Panic seized him, but no matter how helpless he felt, his parents were at work. He couldn't be selfish enough to ask them to come home early because of scary-sounding wind. He was old enough to know that, and besides, he was a man, even if a young one. It was too embarrassing to say out loud. So the boy, suppressing his feelings, hid himself in his room on the upper floor and finished up his homework. Hours passed that felt twice as long as usual. Jingle, jingle, click. The sound of keys, and the door opening. "I'm home." He heard his mom's voice downstairs. The dread drained from Boy A's body and vanished. When he turned his attention, he no longer heard the growling of the cold wind outside. The thing that made him afraid was already gone, so he ran down from his room to the lower floor to welcome his mom back. He saw the kitchen lights downstairs. She must have turned them on. After coming back from her job as cashier, it was normal for her to go straight to the kitchen to start making dinner. Ring, ring. On his way to the kitchen, the phone in the hallway sounded. It was a bit annoying. Why couldn't the call come earlier and given him the relief he needed then? But his mom would get mad if he didn't pick up, so Boy A reluctantly picked up the handset. "Hello, speaking." With all the practice of a latchkey child, he waited for the voice on the other side of the line. "A-chan, it's Mom. The rain's coming down, so could you bring an umbrella to the market?" Ayo-ch-ch-ch-ch. Part 2. The student council room was lit by a single candle's flame, and all the space from wall to wall was filled by Stella's high-pitched scream. Hagun Academy Student Council Vice President Yudakata Misogi, whose story she had interrupted, spoke with candid exasperation. "Freaking out before we even get to the punchline is something that makes storytellers cry, you know." "BB, but his mom on the phone, then who's in the kitchen? It's way too scary." On one side was Stella, attached shakily to Ikki's arm with tears in her eyes. Tauka sat nearby with a face equally pale. It's fine, Stella-san. There's also the possibility that the one on the phone wasn't real." Tauka suggested that positive interpretation with shaking lips, but... Well, no one knows what happened to him that day. He was never seen again, reportedly. The two girls trembled at Yudakata's eerie voice and screamed in despair. Watching them, Ikki gave a wry laugh. If Boy A was never seen again, the vice president wouldn't know this story to tell it. But it seemed Stella and Tauka were far too rattled to notice something this simple. Why were they here in the dark student council room? Some days ago, the Hagun Academy 7 Stars Sword Art Festival had ended with the match between Tauka and Ikki. The closing ceremony and the transfer of the school flag between team captains had occurred, and the school term was basically almost over. The student council business regarding the representative selection battles, including the affair during the Okutama training camp, were settled for the time being, so Yudakata created a plan to recognize everyone's services. Gathered in the student council room, they were passing the hot summer under air conditioning and with food, treating each other to bone-chilling ghost stories. And he had also invited Ikki and Stella, who helped the student council with the matter in Okutama. At any rate, Ikki had no idea Stella was so scared of ghost stories. "I didn't expect you to be weak to something like this, Stella. Back then, you were so hyped up about the Okutama giant, so I thought you'd really be into this kind of thing too." Compared to Stella's usual unyielding spirit, she was now acting in a very girlish way, and it made him smile. Because, You can beat up a giant but not a ghost, right? Oh, right, now I get it. Well, he loved the headstrong Stella too, so it was no problem. Okay, now it's Kanata's turn. Yudakata, who was finished with his story, slid the small dish holding the candle in front of him over to the student council treasurer Kanata Taudokubara to tell the next tale. Make us shiver, Kanata-senpai. Yes, please leave it to me. Returning a nod to Renrin Tamaru, the student council general affairs manager, Kanata straightened in her seat. At that motion, Tauka and Stella gulped and held their breaths. But while the two of them were miserably shrieking, they were paying more attention than anyone else. If they were to firm up, there was no way they would panic so. Perhaps the part of the brain that would revel in this common stimulus was starved. Kanata smiled at their serious gaze and full attention. I've mentioned before that I'm not very familiar with ghost stories, so I prepared something this. Kanata quietly slid a single tablet PC past the remains of the delivered pizza they had been eating, and with a thin finger she tapped on an icon on the liquid crystal display to start a video. What appeared on the screen was a sickroom-like chamber palely lit by a nightlight. Next to a bed, located in a corner of the room behind a hospital curtain, there was a human anatomy model. Ikki recognized the layout of the room. This is the infirmary, isn't it? Kana-chan, what's this footage? It's a recording from the infirmary surveillance camera, which Madam Director gave to me a few days ago. Well, you'll be able to see it in detail, so I'll refrain from speaking. Kanata turned her gaze to the table, but only the unchanging image of a deserted infirmary could be seen. What was about to happen? Maybe the anatomy model starts moving by itself. Once again, you're going with a cliché, Stella. Maybe we'll see some students do phys ed self-study. Yudakata's words were slapped back by both student council secretary, Ikazuchi Seiju and Tauka. Vice President, that would not be a ghost story, but a dirty one. And it'd be an awful thing to bring to the student council room. Seeing that take place, Kanata smiled with her usual dignity. President, please be at ease. It's not that kind of recording. And now it begins. She murmured this while her gaze fell on the table, and as she said, "Huh." Within the still image of the infirmary deep in the night, something moved. A clank, and then the desk, bed, chair, medicine cabinet all began to tremble slightly, then to shake. The desk's legs began to rise as if dancing. The bed threw off its pillow and sheets. The chair began to circle the infirmary room on its rollers. The glass windows of the medicine cabinet flapped open and closed, tossing out its contents like a mouth guffawing. WW, what is this? Earthquake? No, if that were true, the camera would be jerking around. As Ikki said, the infirmary was being shaken as if by an enormous earthquake, but the view of it was not. This meant the surveillance camera and the building it was installed into were not moving. Then what is this? As Stella's face became pale, the footage again showed something startling. The infirmary items that had already been violently in motion began to float in midair. They flew freely around the room, with the chairs bashing the fluorescent lights and the bed crashing noisily into the windows. What? It was clearly supernatural. Even Ikki sucked in a breath, at a loss for words. And in the next instant, the image was abruptly shrouded in black. Did the camera break? For a second they thought so, but they immediately realized it was not the case, because the noise was still there and the darkness in the image began to quiver. Yes, what Ikki and the others saw was not the room, but a huge, bizarre, black-pupiled eyeball glaring reproachfully back at them. NGHAA. Tauka and Stella's harmonized screams drowned out the audio. Then surveillance camera broke, and the video was cut off. KK Kana-chan, what was? At Tauka's stiff question, Kanata shook her head. I don't know. This was taken 10 days ago. Every day since, desks have been flying and windows breaking on campus, and things like what's on this footage have happened in the dead of night. I hear the teachers are patrolling, but despite their searching, we still don't know the cause. being informed by Kanata that this was an actual crime scene, and realizing that what they just saw might happen again only a wall away, everyone found their faces hardening even more. It was no longer just a ghost story. I'd suspect that this poltergeist activity is caused by a student with psychokinetic ability, but since you said the teachers were on the case, they must have already followed this line of investigation, right? Kanata nodded gently at Ikki's question. Yes, but it seems that none of psychokinetic Blazer students were responsible. At Kanata's words, Stella gulped. Then it really is the work of a ghost. Kanata's reply suggested a possibility, even worse than a ghost. That, or perhaps the work of an intruder beyond the Academy's knowledge. But Kanata, why'd you bring this? Well, the truth is when I told Madam Director about the ghost story party in the student council room today, she said, instead of a story, wouldn't something real be more interesting? Since we have this footage, go show everyone and have them look for the culprit. And gave me the recording. How kind of her, wouldn't you say? Kanata smiled, probably thanking the board director wholeheartedly for providing something to share at this gathering. But everyone else in the student council made sour expressions. She really does see us as a means to take care of odd jobs. That's really dirty of her, the middle-aged woman. Middle-aged women are dirty. It's written so in the tale of Genji. 1. Renrin-san, Vice President Misogi. I believe there are surveillance cameras in the student council room, too. At Ikki's mention, the two's expressions froze, but by then it was already too late. Moving past that, Kanata looked at everyone present in the dark room. It's true that they're small jobs, but searching for a poltergeist in the school at night sounds fun, like a trial of courage, right? How about we all do it together? That's true, I'll join in. The one who agreed to the proposal first was Ikki. He was grateful that Kanata had brought this up in an effort to interest everyone, and besides, it was relevant to him as a student of the academy. He did not want to ignore a responsibility and leave handling it to the student council. But Ikki looked toward Stella sitting next to him. Stella, if you're that scared then I guess you won't participate. Choosing to join might make it hard for Stella to refuse, so out of consideration he did not neglect this follow-up statement. Stella took quick advantage of Ikki's life-saving gesture, replying with a relieved face. That's right. I think I'll stay here with Tauka-san and wait for everyone else. But though she was scared like Stella, Tauka did not choose to stay. And no, I'll join too. It's a problem that we students must not ignore. I'm the student council president, so if Kurigenkun's willing then I can't refuse. Despite shaking mightily, Tauka spoke with her lips pressed together tight. She seemed to be pushing her dread aside with her strong sense of duty, and after Tauka spoke, I'll come along, of course. No doubt it's hiding and moving between security rooms. My sixth sense tells me so. How surprising, Vice Prez. I'm suspicious of the security rooms too. Seiju spoke up at Utakata and Renrin's announcements. You two will only be hiding, I think. Shut up, and what are you gonna do? A student council member has no choice but to participate. All members of the student council thus declared their willingness to participate in Kanata's plan. As a result, so Stella-san's the only one who'll stay, right? Why? Somehow it ended up with Stella by herself. In the school where a ghost might be roaming, Stella-san will stay and guard the student council room by herself, right? In the pitch-black student council room with nobody else around. Just like the first sacrifice in a horror movie, alone. I guess I'll go after all. It's not something a student of Hagen can brush off. At Kanata's deliberately agitating tone, Stella, with jaw clenched and face stiff, finally switched over to joining. Ikki spoke up in worry. You don't have to force yourself. If you'd like, I'll stay here with you. But Stella shook her head vigorously at Ikki's proposal. I'm fine. Ghosts don't exist in the first place. That's not scientific. It's more likely someone's prank. I'll find out who it is and give them a piece of my mind. Kanata let slip a satisfied, and slightly mean smile at Stella for putting on a brave face and raging. Hee, that's the Crimson Princess indeed. And thus, Ikki and the others went forth to find the poltergeist, on a trial of courage to explore the dark academy building. Part 3. Though they were going to search the school at night, Hagun Academy was large, and traveling as a group would take a bit too much time, more than anything else. Having a huge group throws a damper on the whole test of courage thing, right? That was Utakata's view, so they split into 3 random parties and went off separately. The time was 10 o'clock at night, past the time when any students or teachers were left in the main school building. As a result of the random drawing, Ikki was paired with someone unexpected, and all that was audible in the quiet as profound as the deep ocean was their heels hitting the floor. Ikki turned his gaze, as if beckoned by the sound. The one walking next to him was a tall lady wearing a white dress and a wide-brimmed hat, Kanata Tautokubara. Nothing was said between them as they walked through the school at night, or rather, I can't think of anything to say. With Utakata or Seiju, they'd have enough in common to find a topic. Renren and Tauka were opponents he had faced directly, so dealing with them would be relatively easy. Stella, certainly, would mean no shortage of conversation, and even if they did not talk, just being together would make this a fun time. But Kanata was the one member of the student council he shared no common ground with. For Ikki, who could not be described as a naturally good conversationalist, this was partner of high difficulty. The atmosphere around her was another hurdle. She felt like a well-bred lady, someone on a completely different level. Rude as it may be, if he compared Kanata to Stella the Princess, Kanata was the one who seemed more upper class. And in truth, the Tautokubara family was a wealthy one that, through the Tautokubara Foundation, contributed to all kinds of philanthropy around the world and represented Japan internationally. Kanata was the daughter of that family. Ikki came from an equally famous family, but he was not raised in a way appropriate to high society, so there was no way for him to have the same kind of atmosphere and bearing. But still, he was interested in Kanata Tautokubara as a knight. She was the daughter of one of Japan's prominent and wealthy families, and second place in Hagun Academy's internal ranking. Like Reikiri, Kanata was among a rare class of student knight who had real combat experience from participating in many special missions. Ikki remembered the day they had first exchanged words, and the ferocious presence that gave the impression her white clothing was soaked in blood. And now she was like him, a representative to the Seven Stars Sword Art Festival. It was entirely possible that they might face off in front of the entire country. So he was interested. What kind of person was she? What motivated her and how strongly? As a knight who valued understanding his opponent, Ikki's clinical interest was deep. If he allowed this chance to escape, he might not get another chance to be this close to Kanata. That would be a waste, so Ikki decided he would try to come to grips with her. But now that I think about it, this is the first time we've been alone, isn't it? Just as he was about to speak, Kanata took the first word, seizing the conversation at the same moment that Ikki was going to step up. Perhaps she thought the mood was bad. Sorry, I'm not much of a talker. I don't mind. Friendly chatter would be strange and a test of courage. Kanata, not appearing especially troubled, gave a characteristically elegant smile. But it only appeared for an instant. She immediately returned to a serious expression and lowered her voice. In truth, I've wanted to speak with you for quite a while. Perhaps it would dampen the pleasure of this event, but may I ask something? She said something he did not expect. Tautokubara-san wanted to talk with me. About what? Maybe she was interested in him as a knight, the same way he was interested in her. There was little else they shared for a topic. Well, Ikki was quite ready to take up the matter. He had no reason to deny her or keep her in suspense. Yes, if there's something I can answer, I'll do my best, so please ask. Thank you greatly, then I won't hold back. At Ikki's acceptance, Kanata spoke the thing she had always wanted to ask him. Kurage-kun, does a kiss feel good? Huh. Part 4. Ikki's thoughts lurched to a stop at the unexpected question. That's what you wanted to ask me. Yes. Kanata nodded eagerly at Ikki's response, and as embarrassment shaded her cheeks, she tapped her index fingers together in front of her chest. It's embarrassing that I have no experience with these relationships, but kisses are interesting. Since you and Stella-san are a couple, I was wondering if I would understand after asking you. She peeked at Ikki from under the brim of her hat. Hope shined in that gaze. I see. She seemed quite serious. Who could have thought that someone so adult like Kanata would ask this question while acting in such a childish way? Ikki twitched at his unpreparedness, but the romantic relationship between him and Stella was already widely known. There was nothing to hide, so Ikki answered Kanata honestly. Does it feel good? How to put it? If you do it properly, I guess. It can be done improperly. When we weren't used to it, well, our teeth bumped together, stuff like that. Oh my. Those were the heavy words of experience. Perhaps Kanata was imagining a shameless scene. She was giggling in a strange way. But if done properly, kisses feel good. That's right. And most of all, it's an important expression of love, so it's also exciting in a way. Speaking of expressing love, is it different from holding hands or embracing? Those are ways to do it, but I feel kissing is still one rank higher. In other words, kissing is special. Putting it that way seems plain, but it does feel so. Compared to holding hands or hugging, you get happier. Taken all together, kisses have a different kind of appeal and pleasantness. That's what I think. Talking so seriously about kisses was a tad embarrassing, but Ikki still answered Kanata despite the blush on his face. I see. However, incidentally, when you and Stella-san kiss, how happy do you feel in detail? Detail. Kanata charged forward at an unbelievable angle, and she did it with a maidenly expression shining with hope and curiosity. Do I have to answer that? If you can, please. You irk. Having said he would do his best to answer, the sincere Ikki could not go back on his word. He brought the memories of his kisses with Stella to mind and crafted his next words. Through touching lips, you can feel the other's warmth and the sensation. It feels good and I like it. And also, Stella begs me for kisses like a puppy, which is really cute, and having someone who wants it like that makes me happy, I'd say. It's lovely. What am I blabbering right now? Ikki's face boiled, and he was steadily losing his grasp on the things tumbling from his mouth, but his was not the only red face. Kanata had her own blushing cheeks and watery eyes as she listened. It seems that merely hearing it has made me embarrassed. Then please don't make me say it. He could not hold back the complaint. Seeing Ikki this way, Kanata smiled apologetically, but then she immediately mumbled with her eyes closed as if daydreaming. Thanks to you, I now understand that the wonderfulness of kissing is exactly as I imagined it. How nice. I'd also like to have such a kiss someday. A kiss as happy as what you and Stella-san share. Anyway, that's the best answer I can give. Now let's get back to finding the ghost. If we just stand around here, it'll never get done. The inquiry had left both their faces aflame, so Ikki escaped the situation with quick steps. And as he did so, oh, Stella-san, even though I told you to stay next to me, why are you falling back so nonchalantly? But shouldn't we follow seniority? Since you're a year higher, Tauka-san, I thought it'd be more respectful to walk a step behind. He saw the Stella-Tauka pair turn the corner ahead of him. Part 5. No, don't be so humble. This is where an A rank like yourself should march grandly in front. Usually this kind of mysterious phenomenon would be the work of organizations like Plasma or Go Black Circle GOM. 2. And with my control of lightning, I'm better as a guard against surprise attacks from behind. I'll leave the front to you, since your attack power surpasses mine. It'll be fine. I've already checked that there aren't any humans by using my electromagnetic waves as a radar. If you've already checked, then there's no need to go in, right? That's not true. We have to see if by some small chance it really is an actual ghost. By that angle, you saying it'll be fine is completely wrong. And you're saying you'll guard our backs, but you're just using me as a shield. And if there's a ghost, you'll leave me behind to run away by yourself. I'm not going to do that. A lie, right now your whole body's stiff and shaking. My reverse sight won't let such falsehoods pass. GRR, what an annoying ability. The two were pacing noisily in front of a washroom. It appeared that someone needed to check inside, but they were arguing over who should go in first. They're really not good with scary things. Watching this was rather interesting, but not calming their anxiety was a bit mean-spirited. Thinking so, Icky wanted to call out, but... MRGH. Suddenly, Kanata covered his mouth from behind. Looking back, he saw a rather angry face, bidding him to remain quiet. SSH. Piwa, what's the matter, Taudokubara-san? That's no good, Kurigane-san. You can't speak with such an ordinary tone. Kanata spoke wryly at a volume the two other girls would not be able to hear. WI. Because we're on a test of courage, right? Isn't it boring to speak normally? We have to startle them. No, it's my duty as the host of this event to do more than simply startle. But they're really scared. It would be bad to take it further. Not so. If Stella-san and Tauka-chan honestly disliked monsters and ghost stories, they wouldn't have joined the party in the first place, since we told them it would be about scaring each other. That's true. Even when girls are saying, I'm scared, they still go to haunted houses and watch horror movies, screaming eek as the while. In other words, those two are currently in the middle of enjoying the thrill of this test of courage. We must not douse that. So that's how it is. Kanata's explanation was certainly convincing, and it was reasonable for scary stories to make a listener afraid. As she said, calling to them out of kindness could reduce their fun, and that might be unwanted. Icky criticized his own thinking and held off from joining up with the two girls. But how should we scare them? Make a huge noise from behind? Upon being asked, Kanata gave a wicked smile. Hee, well, please leave that to me, the host. Part 6. Why, you won't give up, will you, Stella-san? Oh, of course not. Heading in first, don't make fun of me. Guz. The two of them had been standing there bickering for about 3 minutes, but all the quarreling had decided nothing. Going in circles for so long only worsened the mood. Neither one had energy left to continue this unproductive argument, so the 1-year-older Tauka made a suggestion. Fine, then how about this? We'll both yell, is anyone there? Into the washroom. If there's no answer, then doesn't it mean there's no ghost? Nice, let's go with that. It made no sense at all, but the two were so wilted that they completely ignored reason. Both girls turned to the pitch-black washroom and gathered their voices to ask, is a ghost in there? Well, there were no such things as ghosts, and since Tauka had already used her electromagnetic waves to check that no people were inside, of course no reply came back. So, no one. A reply came back. In an instant, eyes widened and sweat beaded on the two girls' foreheads. I'd said no, right? That's right. Ah, good. I was wondering what we would do if there was. Why, yeah, I like ghost stories, but the real thing is no joke, huh? Very much so, ahaha. Tremble, tremble, tremble. Their knees knocked, and their faces drained of color. Something indescribably strange had evidently just happened, making it hard to disregard the abnormal like they had up to now. By the way, even though there's nothing inside, we just heard a response. We did, didn't we? From right behind us. I wonder whose voice that was. It has to be our own voices echoing back at us, muffled and distorted, saying something or other. Why, yes, I see something or other. That's right. Compared to an unscientific explanation like ghosts, that's much more realistic. So, on the count of 3, let's turn around and look. Got it, then I'll count. 1, 2, 3. The two steeled themselves and turned to look over their shoulders on that signal to see. An empty hallway, lined with windows that, here on the third floor of the school, showed only the darkness outside. So it really is just an echo. There was nothing, ghost or otherwise, of course not. I found you. Except for a white-clad, black-haired figure of a woman reflected in the nearby window, standing behind the two girls. Juiahh. Stella and Tauka screamed like seized chickens and fled from the school building with the speed of a whirlwind. Achihiahaha. Back in the hallway, the ghost arched its back and erupted in laughter. What an amazing sound. Jaya, even though they're girls, ha ha ha. The black-haired ghost laughed loudly and grabbed its own hair, peeling it off to reveal blondness that shimmered in the dim light. It was only Kanata wearing a wig. While the two girls were looking down from the hallway, she had donned the wig and used her ability Diamond Dust. 3. To control invisibly tiny fragments of her blade, dispersing and scattered them in the air. Using the diffused reflections of those fragments, she had made her image appear in the space behind the two girls. Could this be the reason you prepared the wig? But of course, it took so much work to get this trial of courage happening, so as host I wanted them to have an interesting time. Besides, it was fun for me too. Hee ahaha. Those words allowed Ikki to understand why Kanata had provoked Stella into joining them back in the student council room. She had planned on scaring the easily startled Tauka and Stella, to the point of making specific preparations. Wow, what a terrible hobby. It was refreshing how meticulous she was. And moreover, Ikki had no inkling before of Kanata's prankster side, just as he had not expected her to ask about kissing. The difference from her usual adult image reminded him anew that people could not be understood without thorough interaction. Ah, my stomach hurts. Oh, Kurigane-san, what's the matter? Is there something on my face? And no, that's not it. Were you thinking that I'd be more adult? Eh? Ikki trembled at having his inner thoughts being so accurately pinpointed, and Kanata did not miss that reaction. Her expression turned elated. Hee, bullseye right. Is it that obvious? No, I get this misunderstanding often. At home, I'm trained to not let anything show, and with my height, it's led people to call me the Charlach Frau. But in reality, I'm not ladylike at all, you know. I love pulling pranks. In the past, I've always gone along with Yudakata-kun's tricks. Tricks? Swapping the oolong tea in the refrigerator for noodle sauce, for instance. How simple but evil. And so like Yudakata-kun, Tauka-chan spanked me often as well. Her palm hurts quite a lot. Laughing, Kanata spoke happily of older days, letting Ikki learn something new about her. His image of Kanata had already been shaken, but despite her elegant air in her usual life, her inner disposition was apparently that of a prankster. He was surprised, but maybe this surprise was itself proof that she had always been this way. How unexpected. At least, it's very easy to see Vice President Masogi in such a scene. Hee, are you disappointed seeing me as such a childish woman? And no, I just think you're a little easier to talk to. Given that honest answer, Kanata's lips relaxed happily. That's good. I can only be here with everyone for another year. In my time left, I wanted to be friends with everyone and pass the moments having fun. Ah, I see. You're all third years, so you'll be graduating. Yes, that's true too, but... Kanata's tone darkened. Actually, once I graduate from school, I'll be getting married. Am married? Ikki was shocked by this sudden statement, and at the same time, he noticed something strange in it. But didn't you say you haven't been in a relationship with anyone? Yes, I haven't. If not, who will you be marrying? I don't know. Huh? Ikki was confused for only a moment by that reply. No, it can't be. He had also escaped a famous family, and so he understood instantly. Meaning it's someone your family decided on, isn't that right? Kanata nodded quietly. Marriage between wealthy families, betrothals in order to create ties and bring in up-and-coming hopeful young industrialists, they're quite common among the upper class. My marriage will be one of these, perhaps a foreigner from Southeast Asia, or a businessman from France, I believe. Whichever it may be, I'll likely be emigrating to my husband's country, so I want to have as much fun as I can while I still have carefree days before my graduation in Japan. Is that how it is? Hee, and so I'm very grateful to you. To me. Yes, I was able to have a very valuable conversation today. Given my position, I can't be free to love, but I'm still a girl, so I've always wanted to know what it's like to be in love. How does it feel? And, thanks to you, I know how happy and wonderful that is now. Ikki could not reply to Kanata's bright smile. Because of his early life, one question came to mind. Was she not being forced to obey her family without following her own feelings? And marriage was an important part of life. To have that be chosen by the family. Kanata was not a close friend. Their relationship could be described as quite superficial. This was a comment he should perhaps keep to himself, and yet, aren't you bitter about it? He was concerned for this girl, who had listened to him talking about his and Stella's relationship with eyes shining. Was she not sacrificing herself for her family? Bitter, well that's crack. But as Kanata was about to reply to his question, a sharp sound echoed, and the window to the classroom they were standing in front of split open. Part 7. White cracks suddenly appeared in the glass, and in a blink, glass in the hallway, windows from one end of the wall to the other all burst apart. Watch out. Ugh. Shards flew like daggers. Ikki, with outstanding reflexes, immediately took action to avoid them, pushing Kanata flopping down to the floor. That was dangerous. Are you okay? Why, yes, thank you. Because of Ikki's fast response, Kanata had not been injured. But your hand is. Kanata turned her face and the direction of her gaze. It immediately became obvious that Ikki's outstretched right hand was flattening her full bosom. As soon as Ikki realized this fact, a sensation of uncommon softness traveled from his palm to his brain. Ikki hurriedly removed that hand and tried to explain. Sorry, that wasn't on purpose. It's fine, I know that. Ikki was a person of virtue, so Kanata understood the situation without needing him to explain. I'll keep it a secret from Stella-san, okay? That'll really help. But unfortunately, it looks like our fun test of courage ends here. Muttering this with disappointment, Kanata looked toward the classroom whose window had first broken. It could not have done so without reason. The poltergeist seen in the recording should be found within. Here we come, Francesca. Standing up, Kanata manifested her device, a rapier formed from transparently pale glass. Grasping it in her right hand, Kanata raised it horizontally and thrusted it into her own left palm, but the blade of Francesca was rather fragile, and it broke into dust as it entered to dance as glitter in the night air. This was the Charlotte Frau's preparation for combat. She spoke to Ikki with a voice not at all like the schoolgirl she had used a moment ago, but the dignified voice of a knight who has answered many special summons to straddle the line of life and death. I'll assist. Shall I leave the front to you? Yeah. Kanata's effective range was mid to close, while Ikki was only capable in close range, making it the correct choice for him to proceed first. He had no complaint. Come forth, Intetsu. Ikki charged into the classroom with his device in hand. What came into view was the same as depicted in the recording. Chairs, desks, cleaning tools, everything inside the classroom was dancing and circling in midair. And in the middle of that commotion, a single small shape was standing. With a white cloth over its head like a curtain, it could not be viewed clearly, but there was a slit where its head would be, and a pair of blazing eyeballs glared through at Ikki. Those were doubtlessly the same eyes last seen in the video footage. It's you. Hold it right there. If you surrender, I won't get rough. But before Ikki could complete his demand, the criminal turned to face Ikki, and all of the classroom's chairs and desks dancing in midair were launched at him in unison. His field of view was covered by a barrage of flying furniture. No intent to surrender could be found. In that case, Ikki launched himself forward. He did not protect himself against the desks and chairs raining down. Why? Because Kanata said that she would assist him, and so none of the malice aimed toward him could possibly reach. Before the dozens of desks and chairs thrown by psychokinetic power could strike Ikki, they were all cut to shreds that dispersed in the air. It was the power of Kanata's diamond dust, a noble art that manipulated many invisibly small blades. Even now, those blades whirled around Ikki like a rock shredder, slashing apart everything that would touch Ikki into millions of tiny pieces. The criminal could not hide its shudder at seeing this. It immediately turned, and with very agile movements, it leaped through another classroom window that opened to the outside of the school grounds. But this was the third floor of the school building. Jumping out was not safe even for a blazer. Being in such a hurry, was this a self-destructive act? No, the criminal under a white cloth went into freefall and then floated upward gently. This was psychokinesis, using its poltergeist power on itself. It wants to escape through the air. Such an escape would make it difficult to catch. If he jumped out the window after it, the one who would self-destruct was Ikki. So he slowed down without another option. Kurogane-kun, don't stop, keep chasing it. If he followed it through the window like this, Ikki would fall. Surely Kanata understood this, and yet she was telling him to continue, shouting with confidence and determination. In that case, I'll trust her. Pushed on by her words, Ikki ceased slowing down, and without hesitation followed the criminal through the window, stepping into open space. And when he did, his feet came into contact with something solid. He saw faint, indistinct, transparent footholds being formed under his feet. There was no need for wonder. It was diamond dust being gathered there. Stepping on those footholds, Ikki again jumped upwards, and as he did so more platforms appeared, guiding him into the night sky. Amazing, making such a quick judgment after seeing the enemy's movements. Clarity of judgment that combined a changing situation with one's own repertoire to choose the best action moment by moment. Observational powers able to grasp Ikki's physical ability and predict his footsteps, creating footholds with the optimal timing and spacing. This was the knight with Hagun Academy's second highest ranking. As Ikki appreciated Kanata's capability, he borrowed her power to chase the criminal into the sky. The criminal eyed Ikki coming from behind and tried to use its power to stop the pursuit. But, do you think I'll let you? It likely did not expect this approach, and its reaction was a touch too slow. Faster than it could unleash a psychokinetic blast, Ikki aimed at the criminal and threw in Tetsu from his hand. The black sword point neared. Naturally, the criminal lashed out with psychokinesis to try and knock it away. That opening was what Ikki wanted. With all his might, he stepped forward powerfully enough to break the foothold Kanata had made for him, and shot forward with greater speed, striking the criminal in the body as if gouging into it. I got you. He held the criminal with both arms, cloth and all, clutching so that it could not escape. But now they were even higher in the sky than the school's top floor, about 50 meters above ground. With the criminal in both arms, he could not fall safely. But Ikki was confident. He had a quick-witted and effective partner. There was no problem leaving the fall entirely to her. Diamond Storm. 4. Kanata sent countless blade particles to the ground Ikki was falling toward, churning the earth and filling the air with powder that acted as a cushion, catching him. As I thought. While marveling at the performance, Ikki looked toward the criminal in his arms. It made no indication of movement, as if the blow had taken all breath from it. Also, it was so small. Could it be a young child? With that question in mind, Ikki pulled off the cloth and... Waza gave a cry of surprise. Part 8. What? The culprit was a monkey. Stella yelled in surprise at seeing the offender Ikki had caught, now held in a cage. Indeed, it was actually a wild monkey. But can a monkey, or actually can any animal use noble arts? Tauka was the one to reply. The more distant from human, the less chance there is. but there are some examples. The magic of a blazer was the power to impose one's will upon the world. Humans across history used magic to gain influence, but they were not the only ones to leave their names on that history. Sometimes unique non-human beings holding magic appeared. Didn't the heroes of bygone eras have war horses that galloped across battlefields? And didn't they fight legendary beasts that held such power? At least that's what modern mainstream scientific thought concludes, apparently. I didn't know that. Anyway, I guess it was a false alarm. Stella suddenly noticed the bandage wrapped around the monkey's back leg. Was it injured? Yeah, it was already like that when we caught it. Icky did not notice at first either, but with a chance to look closely, he had seen the deep bite mark on the monkey's leg. It was probably chased out of its troop for using a unique power. You can see it's a young one, wandering around this place by itself. Wouldn't that be the reason? I think it must have been trying hard to defend itself. Like it was an ugly duckling. A wild animal would be out of place in human society, so up until now it had not shown itself except at night, probably hiding out of fear of humans. After being caught and given food, it was so calm it almost felt like a pet. Maybe all that ruckus before was simply self-defense. Hearing Icky and Kanata's statements, Stella furrowed her eyebrows sullenly. She probably wanted to get even for being thoroughly scared. But if that's the case, then I'll forgive it this time. Appreciate my mercifulness. Stella relinquished the idea of revenge and did not sink into dark thoughts. She only poked the monkey inside its cage on the forehead, and when she did, Kai. Her extended finger was caught and held by the monkey's small hand. So cute. But glancing sideways at that saccharine sight, Yudakata spoke to Tauka with a serious face. Taking into account the property damage, this guy was caught by Kuhai-kun and Kanata, right? Since it's a unique that could be harmful to humans, aren't we supposed to put it down? Yes, that's an obligation held in common by all nations of the League. We can't do that. Isn't that just cruel? Stella paled at the exchange between the two student council members, but Icky knew that this question was already settled, so he spoke up. It's fine, Stella. That's something Taudokubara-san already took care of. What do you mean? One of the organizations managed by the Taudokubara Foundation has a facility specializing in the custody and protection of uniques. We contacted them once we realized this little guy would need to be taken in, so they'll come to pick him up straight away. If it really is a unique that poses a threat to humans, it has to be taken into custody anyway. Fortunately, the two of them had not been injured, so according to Kanata, putting forth the Taudokubara name would allow for this lenience. At those words, Stella patted her chest in relief. So that's how it is. That's great. Kanata-san's family really is amazing. They do things like this and support the institution where Tauka-san and her family came from. She agreed with a voice of admiration at her words. I guess so. Icky nodded back, but he remembered his exchange with Kanata. After catching the monkey, Kanata had immediately called her family using her student datapad and asked for the monkey's protection. Yes, then please process it. Yes, thank you very much. Goodbye. How'd it go? Kanata nodded to Icky's inquiry. It was worked out. I hear that father will see to the negotiation directly. This little one won't come to a bad end. That's good. Being the ones to catch him, it'd keep me up at night knowing he might be euthanized. Icky rubbed the head of the monkey he was holding. But how amazing. They even have a facility to protect uniques. Uniques were creatures with extremely dangerous powers, much like this one. Mundane methods could not secure them well, so a dedicated facility needed both sturdiness and large space, as well as the power of knights that could pacify them when necessary. Even a government would find the high cost difficult to work out, making euthanasia the common practice instead of captivity. Icky was surprised that the Taudokubara Foundation operated such a facility, but for Kanata, it was natural that the family would devote such resources. We Taudokubara are old nobility with names etched in history, from back before the French Revolution. The precept of noblesse oblige has been carried down in our blood for many generations. The rich give to the poor, but while the words were easy enough to say, not many took them seriously. The Taudokubara family, even as the name and country and era change, was one of the few that not only spoke of noblesse oblige, but acted. Even if some of the people heartlessly insulted them as hypocrites, they continued in this way through the years. Kanata was sincerely proud of that. You asked before, didn't you, what I was bitter about marrying for the sake of the family. Yes, I'd be lying if I said I haven't felt that way. I wanted to have a love like I imagined it. If I could, I'd stay in Japan with Tauka-chan and the others, and live as a knight on my own. But my respect for the Taudokubara spirit I've inherited is more important. There are many problems in the world that only money can solve. Children who have lost their parents or were thrown away can be raised in institutions that need money. Safeguarding places where those with unique powers can live takes an enormous amount. That's difficult to do with my own power, but the Taudokubara family can accomplish it. They have the will to act, and I don't believe it's a sacrifice to give my life protecting that. To provide strength for many people, over the life of a single knight. Kanata was not going to waver from the path she chose. That is the path of the Taudokubara, and the path of knighthood that I, Kanata Taudokubara, will walk. Her voice was calm, strong, and beautiful as a bell ringing in the night. Hearing her, Ikki knew that his concerns were unneeded, and he knew of Kanata's strength. She really is amazing. Ikki gazed in admiration at Kanata as he remembered back. What she carried was honor born of human strength. That gaze was a bit careless, though. Oh dear, oh dear. I wonder why Kuhei-kun's looking at Kanata with such fiery eyes. Ah, could it be? When they were alone together, they did something that they can't tell Stella-chan. There was someone right here who loved making things complicated. Ikki raised his voice to protest, but... Wah! What are you saying, Vice President Misogi? I would nev, His retort stumbled in the middle. Something like that did happen, something that Stella could not be told, the fact that he and Kanata were the ones frightening her outside the washroom. Why ye are you stammering just now? Brilliant red embers cracked from Stella's hair as she pressed Ikki for faltering. He could only speak candidly. Ah no, you're mistaken, Stella. You're making a huge misunderstanding right now. Taudokubara-san, you can speak up for me, right? He implored the main offender, who smiled softly. SHH, that's a secret between us. Placing an index finger on her lips, Kanata bade Ikki be silent in what was quite a suggestive way. What? Ikki saw the mischievous gleam in Kanata's deep blue eyes and knew his error. She's having fun. He had not told Stella about Kanata's temperament, and now it was far too late. Ikki, Stella summoned Levitane in her right hand. All composure vanished from her eyes, leaving only fury. There was only one thing he could do. Sorry. He's running. Stop right here. What are you keeping a secret? I'll talk. Just calm down and put away the sword. Do you think I'll calm down about this? Afterwards, a rumor made the rounds about a female ghost wandering the school trailing a huge sword. But that was a different tale. References. Up Era. The Tale of Genji, a classic of Japanese literature whose themes include the interaction of sexual relations and political power in the Heian court. Up Era. Plasma or Go Black Circle Gom. Team Plasma from Pokémon or Gorgum from Kamen Rider Black. Both are criminal organizations. Up Era. Diamond Dust. This uses the kanji Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter. Hajikuzu no Ken, Sword of Stardust. Up Era. Diamond Storm. This uses the kanji Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Hashikuzu no Zanfu. Cutting Winds of Stardust. Intermission. Yet another event that Shizuku would have been bitter about if she knew. Right, Kagaman? Shizuku-chan's also surprising bad with things like monsters, you know. Haha, now I want all of us to have a trial of courage too. If you do, don't fail to invite me. By the way, I didn't know about the poltergeist at school, but did you also not know? You didn't write about it in the wall newspaper. Oh, that. Of course I knew about it, but the board director stopped me. Ah, did she? Yep, she's quick to notice these things, since it involved a unique. That's why she talked to Taudokubara-senpai about it, I think. As the director, she couldn't ignore the law after all. Yes, that is certainly how Madam Director is. Kind, in a roundabout way. Right. Now let's leave the previous event and proceed to the next. Number 5 is a story about Stella-chan going for special training with Seikyo-sense after being defeated by the Sword Emperor of Wind. It's a gap in time that the main story didn't cover. What was Stella-chan doing? We'll uncover this secret. Here we go. Chapter 5, Stella's Sleepless Night. Part 1. It was 1 week before the Seven Stars Sword Art Festival, a period for the contenders to rest in preparation for the tournament, but Stella Vermilion was at a lodge in Okutama managed by Hagun Academy. Having been defeated by the Sword Emperor of Wind, she knew that she could not win to the end of the festival the way she was now, so she came to beg for special training from the interim instructor Nene Seikyo. Deep in the forest, Stella ran through overgrowth, chasing after the kimono-clad figure of Seikyo 30 meters ahead. Yo-ho! Seikyo flew through the thin branches, advancing with nimble movements. Stella was irritatedly aware that her own movements like those of an orangutan. Well, if you can get a single hit on me, it's a sign of success, huh? Those were Seikyo's words before this training began. At first, Stella thought Seikyo was underestimating her. As the current rank number 3 of the International King of Knights, Seikyo was obviously strong, but Stella was also an A-rank knight. She should be able to land a single hit, or so she thought, but reality was cruel. She had not gotten so much as a touch after chasing Seikyo for half a day, and even now Seikyo was drawing farther away. Having made no progress so far, Stella changed her approach. She infused Levitane in her hand with magic power. Dragon Fang. And a huge gout of flame in the shape of a dragon appeared. It was Stella's fastest and most maneuverable noble art for pursuit. Haha, amazing. Devouring the trees and shrubs, the dragon went straight for its target with such high speed that even Seikyo would not be able to escape. But not being able to escape was different from being caught. Seikyo turned in midair toward the flame dragon over her shoulder, and roundhouse kicked the pursuing flame dragon on the side of its face. The kick, enhanced by Seikyo's control of gravity, blasted the flame dragon apart with one strike. And in that moment, Seikyo took a huge distance from Stella by riding the produced flame and blast of wind, ascending higher than the crown of the trees above. Had Stella blundered terribly? No, Stella held no illusions about Dragon Fang catching Seikyo. Oh. Seikyo also realized Stella's true goal instantly. The blast had launched her toward a large lake in the middle of the forest. Oh, you were directing me here, huh? At this rate, she would fall into the lake where she could not continue escaping. That was most likely Stella's aim, Seikyo guessed, but she would not play along so easily. Seikyo promptly summoned the power of gravity into the soles of her feet. Instead of breaking the surface of the water, she landed on that surface and slid across like she was walking. Seikyo's feet were not stopped, but that was fine. This opponent wielded gravity, so Stella easily predicted that she would not sink into the water. The reason Stella had chased Seikyo to the lake was not to seal her escape, but to remove the forest foliage that were blocking Stella's own path. I'll catch you here. Seikyo was a moment too slow. Stella shot forth from the forest and jumped onto the lake's surface without hesitation. As she touched the waters, she used her ability, dashing forward by turning the liquid under her feet into expanding steam and using that as footholds. Quite a creative use of your power. The petite and agile Seikyo had an advantage in racing through the forest, but Stella's plain foot speed was superior. Over the open lake, Seikyo had no chance of outrunning her opponent. The distance between them closed up in an instant. Huh. Stella launched 4 bullets of flame as she ran, which arced at the surface of Seikyo's front, back, left, and right, striking up a giant barrier of water that stole away Seikyo's escape and her field of vision. Yowza! A shout and a flash. In the split second that Seikyo could not see Stella, Seikyo and the water around her were cut through. I don't feel any contact. But the response to Stella's sword was fluid water, not the resilience of flesh or the hardness of bone. The water fell back down to the surface, and Stella shuddered. And not here. Neither shape nor shadow of Seikyo could be found. Where did she go? Stella searched for her target with flustered eyes darting, and at her neck. Oh no, who are you looking for? That mocking voice sounded from behind. Stella turned in panic, and there Seikyo was, standing with her single-toothed claws atop Stella's still-raised sword. An attack that robs your opponent of her field of sight. You've got a tactical sense worthy of praise. But, your sword lacks a certain decisiveness, Stella-chan. Elek. Yup. Nodding, Seikyo gently pulled at Stella's cheek. Stella stiffened at what she had just been told and could not react. Whack. Ugh. To a flick on her forehead. It blew her away across the water like a rock skipping over the surface until she finally hit the opposite shore, almost fainted from the agony of collision. Get crushed, big boobs. Oh no. Seikyo had launched herself upward with force and speed augmented by gravity manipulation, so high up that her back was against the sun, and Stella could not see the killing blow or get up and move away from a direct hit. The impact a moment later kicked up dust and emitted a mountain-crushing roar, leaving Stella's body sunk deep into the earth. Kuh. But despite the significant damage, Stella managed to barely maintain conscious. She had blocked the descending kick with her sword at the perfect time. Ho, what amazing reflexes, huh? I heard someone's personal grudge in that last part. Dunno what you're talking about. Playing dumb, Seikyo jumped back from Stella's half-buried body. Well, that's about as much as you can take, right? The sun's setting too, so let's end it for the first day. Seikyo did not press the attack further, but Stella pushed herself up and protested. W8, I can still go on. But Seikyo only returned a warm half-smile. No, you can't. You're like a baby gazelle just barely on your feet, right? Hardly what I'd call able to go on. Ugh. And if I bully you any more than this, how are you getting back on your own? You better believe I'm not gonna carry you. Stella could not reply to that. The middle of the forest was dozens of kilometers away from the lodge. She would not have the strength to walk that distance after any more fighting. Well, do your best crawling back, wahaha. Seikyo started walking off, leaving Stella alone. But Stella had one thing she needed to ask. W8, what is my sword missing? At least tell me that. If she didn't get an answer, this training would end on a down note, and she would have to live with this murky feeling on her chest, so Stella begged. But Seikyo refused to answer. Didn't I already say I'm not teaching you anything? That was the condition. During this training period, you should be examining yourself. Think and improve. What do you lack? If you can't figure it out, then that's the kind of knight you are. With those scathing words hanging in the air, Seikyo disappeared into the thickly shadowed trees. Stella, alone on the shore of the lake, did as Seikyo commanded. What do I lack? Right now she could not even guess. Part 2. It was the dead of night, just after the midnight hour, when Stella finally returned to the lodge. Getting in the bath before creeping back to her room took about an hour, and just doing that left Stella exhausted. Her energy and willpower were completely spent, so Stella immediately got in her futon and fell into the muddy embrace of slumber, but I can't get to sleep. Stella was still awake even an hour after she entered her bed. Why was that, when she was so tired? The reason was easy to guess. She had not felt the warmth of the boy who was usually nearby. At bedtime, they would usually exchange a playful kiss before entering their bunks. Hearing the slight sounds of breathing above her, basking in the happiness of knowing he was there, she would fall into slumber easily. That was how Stella got good sleep, a habit she was not satisfying at all tonight. Ooh. It was only a single day of separation, but even in the middle of summer, she could not help but feel a chill within. She hungered for the touch of the boy she loved, for the feel of his lips and face. If nothing else, she wanted to hear his voice. Suddenly, Stella's gaze was drawn to the student datapad she laid next to her pillow as an alarm clock. Though this place was in the mountains, it was regularly visited. Electricity was available, which meant she could make phone calls. She could hear his voice. But Stella stopped her reaching hand. No, you can't do that, Stella Vermilion. She did not want to show Icky her weakness after being defeated by the Sword Emperor of Wind. That was why she had come here. Yet she had been trounced today by the deviceless Yaksha princess, and if she called him now, who knew how weak her voice would sound? It was only the first day, and she was too humiliated to cry, but at this rate the dawn would come. No helping it, let's use my trump card. Stella got a travel bag from under her bed. Yes, she had anticipated becoming not homesick, but icky sick. So to deal with that, I'll get under the blankets Icky, and I use. By this method, she would be able to sleep wrapped in Icky's scent despite their separation. Quite pleased with her own cleverness, Stella quickly shook off the blankets she was using, exchanging them for the ones she brought, and wrapped herself in them before drawing a deep breath, then jolted up from surprise. This isn't right. This isn't Icky's blanket. Since the blankets were those of their dormitory, all the students of the academy used the same type. Identifying them by sight was impossible, but not by smell. This scent was, no mistake, it belonged to Icky's little sister, Shizuku. GRR, it can't be, did she make the first move? That girl never overlooked anything. Yes, she had to be killed at some point, but Stella gave a fearless smile. However, don't think you've won, Shizuku, you messed up. How had Shizuku messed up? She had used her own blankets for the switch. If you were going to do it, you might as well have used Alice's. If you love Icky as much as I do, then it's easy to take his little sister's smell as his. Haha, that disdain of yours gives me the win. Stella quickly wrapped herself in her bedding and breathed deeply. What entered her nose was the remnants of Shizuku's milky sweet fragrance, which was close enough to Icky's that Stella could use it to strengthen her image of holding him tight. A surprisingly vivid image, if she would say so herself. Stella's body shook from the sensation filling her heart, as if Icky was breathing next to her. Ahs. This was good, even beyond her expectations. Stella suddenly noticed that this was the first time that she was daydreaming of Icky this way. Boy or girl, love meant anyone would act this way while imagining the one they loved. But in Stella's case, the real Icky was always right nearby, somewhere she could touch if she stretched out her hand. That was a happy thing, but there were times she could not do so. Some things were too embarrassing to ask for. But the Icky in my mind can do anything, which meant that this was a chance to enjoy herself, right? For example, if she took off her clothes right now and wrapped herself in the bedding, how wonderful a dream could she see? And no, I can't do that, not something so vulgar. Turning red at the thought despite herself, Stella shook her head wildly. Her heart was beating like it was going to explode. She could not do this even in a daydream, or else she would not be able to pull back again. Stella knew this, so she stopped herself, but then, what was so bad about it? The demon in her heart whispered, after all, that it was just her imagination. It was not like she was bothering anyone, right? No, but this was something that all lovers did. She was the only one holding back. But stuck between reason and desire, Stella lay in anguish. Taking the leap was too audacious, and yet letting it go was too disappointing, so as a result. Part 3. Whoa, those are some bags under your eyes. Did you not sleep at all last night? Yeah, well. Stella had been boiling in wicked thoughts, and ended up not getting any rest. Seeing her in such exhaustion, Seikyo patted her on the shoulder. Well, I know how you feel. If someone told me I lacked something, I wouldn't be able to sleep either. But if you're thinking this over so seriously, I'm sure you'll figure it out quick. And this way, the things you'll realize will have meaning, right? Work hard, work hard. Haha, I'll do that, yeah. Stella could not admit she had forgotten all about it. Intermission. So nothing naughty happened. Doesn't look like it, Alice Jan. Then, what did she do during all this special training? More importantly, the suggestive phrasing of the title was to draw in the readers, right? Even if that's true, Shizuku got naked and rolled around in Ikki's bedding while Stella wasn't there. I thought she did that because summer was so hot, but this was the real reason, was it? Those two really get along well, wouldn't you say? Seems so. Or rather, if they took Ikki together, I think everyone will be happy. Well, Senpai's character would make that difficult. Now then. This special edition of the Wall newspaper will end with the next event. The last story is from before Alice and I entered Hagun Academy. A year ago, back when the worst one came to Hagun. Yes, to be specific, it's a tale of the beginning of the worst one. No, the crownless sword king whose name now echoes across the nation. It's time to present Rakudai Kishi no Ayuatan Episode 0. Please enjoy. Chapter 0. Rakudai Kishi no Ayuatan Episode 0. Part 1. It was the opening day of the new school term. Spring break had ended, and the Hagun Academy campus was filled with the sounds of people and the rustling of leaves. Amid that boisterous noise, a boy with unstylish black hair and pitifully soft face walked while shouldering the weight of a young woman. He was Ikki Kurigane, an F-rank student knight repeating his first school year. The woman was Yuyuri Orki, homeroom teacher for Ikki's Year 1 Class 1, whose youthful face and figure was ruined by eyes ringed with deep shadow. At the moment, he was taking her to the school infirmary from their homeroom, where her health had collapsed, and she had vomited a catastrophic amount of blood. Sorry, Kurigane-kun, I've made more trouble for you, cough. Cough? It's fine, but please don't try to talk if you're not up to it. You're very pale. Oh, this is nothing. Just transfuse 2 liters of blood and I'll be back in shape. If you're getting transfusions by the liter, that's already a problem, right? Sensei, your body's weaker than most, so don't push yourself. But we have to celebrate opening day for the new first years. That's why I had to be bright and welcoming, you know. Orki-sensei's the same as ever. His teacher knew better than anyone that her body would not able to endure it, but she was fine doing foolish things for her students. Ikki knew that kindness personally, and his respect for her did not let him argue. I guess I should just let it go for today. He settled on that compromise, just as they reached the school infirmary. Here we are. Upon opening the infirmary door, they were assailed by the sharp odor of medicine. What a nice smell. Being surrounded by this scent calms my heart. I can't say I share that opinion. After all, Ikki had not lived half a lifetime in a hospital. The nurse is not here. I'll go find someone. Cough, it's fine. I can pick out medicine myself. See, Sensei's had so many diseases that she's more informed than most doctors. Orki walked over to the infirmary's desk and started rummaging. Aspirin and indomethacin, silestazole, wow, they even have rarer ones like nitroglycerin here. 1. How lucky, Sensei loves these. Kurigane-kun, do you want some? I think I'll pass. Even though they're delicacies. Orki sat down on a bed and started eating pills like candy. Ikki was quite concerned about whether she was actually choosing medicine properly, but his teacher said it was fine, and indeed her pallor was somehow improving, so he begrudgingly admitted maybe it was okay. What about homeroom? I think everyone's still back there. That's true. There's nothing else important for me to announce. So sorry to ask this, but could you go tell them that it's fine to head home? Got it. Then please rest here, Sensei. You held strong for a while, but that doesn't change the fact that you're unwell. Cough, cough. All right, thanks for worrying. Orki looked up at Ikki's face and gave a small smile. But it's nostalgic, isn't it? Back at the entrance exam, you lent me your shoulder the same way. Yes, I remembered that too. The two of them first met a year ago at the academy entrance examination. Ikki had come to Hagun Academy by foot, and on the way to the 6th practice arena, he found Orki fallen by the side of the road from a seizure and helped her to the test venue. I was really surprised that you were the examiner, and I was very thankful for your help. If you hadn't been there, I would have been late for something so important, but speaking of surprise, that would make two of us, right? No, I'd say I was much more shocked. No examinee before or since has said what you did. Orki eyes wandered in reminiscence. How quick it's been, already a year, isn't it? That winter day was so vivid it might as well have been yesterday. The day she met and dueled this boy named Ikki Kuragain. Part 2. Having power exceeding human norms, Blazers were assets to society, so society stood to benefit from turning them into proper knights. With this the case, almost all of the 7 knight academies in Japan had no barrier to entry besides the basic qualification. Hagun Academy differed. It provided the perks of a dormitory residence system, guaranteed food and clothing, and a full tuition waiver. Not all Blazers were worthy of that investment, and during the selection process, one group of 20 candidates was assigned to Yuyuri Orki. Cough, okay, we're going to have everyone show me their strengths. Once I call your name, please present me your ability using whatever method you prefer. Orki announced this instruction to begin the examination, and the candidates gathered in the 6th practice arena proceeded one after another. There was one who bound flames to twin swords and sliced through a metal practice post, another who flew around the arena carried by wind, another who produced a calming scent wafting from both hands. Every candidate gave a different display, and none could be mistaken as mundane. Though all of them appeared to be no more than children, they were undoubtedly superhuman Blazers. But, it looks like they're all low ability. Orki sighed as she munched on pills spread out over her table. All of the candidates she had seen so far were E rank, maybe D rank. New students were always so. For C rank, 1 out of 50 would be surprisingly many. A single B rank would be quite fortunate. And a rank, not a single one had entered in the history of Hagun Academy. Even now, the only A rank at the school was World Clock Kurono Shinguji. With the entry selection, candidates split into multiple groups. It was not unusual for a group to not have one C rank. The disappointment lingered, though. Orki and the other teachers used to be student knights, too. They held strong feelings toward the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival, the summit where student knights contended. They wanted their alma mater to produce, and for themselves to raise up, a student who could reach the summit they themselves had not attained. They used to take joy in the hope, but none of the students under their charge had the power to grasp such possibility. It's a bit disheartening. I wonder if any of the other groups. But Orki could not let this emotion appear on her face. She let her despondency sink into the depths of her heart and called the next name. Next, Ikki Kuragain-kun, please step forward. Yes. A dignified reply resounded in the arena, and Orki recognized the tone of a warrior. Azure. Unstylish black hair and a childish face that made girls' hearts flutter. The boy standing before her was the one who lent his shoulder to bring her to the arena. He had mentioned he was taking the examination, but who knew he would be in her group? Thanks to your help, I got here on time. Wait, that's right, I'll give you some candy in return. Saying so, Orki dropped a clattering mound of pills into Ikki's hands. Ahaha, I appreciate it. This is a bit chemical as candy goes. Ikki, sporting a hesitant face, put all of them into a pocket. He's easy to play around with. That was Orki's impression of Ikki following along with her foolishness, but she turned her attention back to her job. Her eyes fell to the documents at hand, and when she recognized his lineage, Orki felt a jolt of surprise. Ikki Kuragain was the son of Iron Blood Itsuki Kuragain, director of the Japanese branch of the League of Mage Knight Nations that supervised the country's Mage Knights. Kuragain, it's a rare name, so I suspected, but I didn't know he's the younger brother of the Sword Emperor of Wind. She thought that Itsuki Kuragain's only son was Auma Kuragain, currently attending Bukyoku Academy. She had not heard of a second son at all. But, well, whosever son this was, she still had one task as examiner. Now, please present me your ability. Orki spoke to the candidate at her table as she had to all the others. In response, Ikki stood silently for a short while before asking a question. When you said whatever method we prefer, does that mean I can choose anything? Yes. I'll accept any method that shows me your merits as a blazer. Even as Ikki nodded in understanding, Orki inwardly felt a bit apologetic. It's unfortunate, but this boy will be disqualified, right? She had already come to that conclusion because it was her second time meeting Ikki, and the magic power she felt from him was again too weak. If she did not pay attention, she would not feel it at all. Blazers with such low magic power were rare, and by that alone his assessment was F rank, the lowest. Even among F ranks, his was inferior, so with better rankings and other traits his overall rank would still be lower than E, and Hagun Academy's cutoff was E or above. Even if he was kind enough to help me, this is the hard rule, isn't it? Well, won't you show me your specialty, Kurigane-kun? Hiding the sorrow in her heart, Orki urged Ikki on. Then Orki-sensei, I'd like to prove my worth by beating you in a duel. Would you accept that? He spoke those upsetting words with an adult's direct gaze, and the other candidates nearby began to whisper noisily. D-duel, he's asking for a duel right now. Really? But the examiner is an active mage knight, right? I definitely heard him say that. Which means this guy's a blazer. I don't feel any magic out of him. No, there's a totally weak amount, but challenging a mage knight with that, is he a dumbass? Their surprise was only natural. Hagun's entrance examiners were active service mage knights working at the academy, licensed professionals. They were hardly fair opponents for a blazer who was not even a student knight yet. Hoping for victory was nonsense. What was that? A middle-aged academy guard came from the side and walked up to Ikki's shoulder angrily. No doubt he had taken Ikki's words as frivolous and mocking, and was going to throw Ikki out. Why not? What was Ikki's request but an absurd joke? Please wait a moment. But the one challenged, Orki herself, disagreed. Orki-sensei. It's fine, please step back. Orki turned back to Ikki, who had not retreated a step at any of this, and continued staring straight at her. How unfortunate. I've been away from real fights for so long that my intuition has dulled. To not notice those eyes. Those eyes shined with a gentle light, but on a closer look, they held in their depths a sharp glare of determination, like a honed blade. Orki smiled a little bitterly. It seems he's not just a gentle boy. He was serious and sincere in asking for a duel, and he intended to win. Kurigane-kun, while it's true that we knights can use our devices in illusionary form and fight without wounding, that doesn't remove pain, you know. If we have a duel, it might hurt a lot. I don't think either of us want that, so there should be other ways to show ability, don't you think? But if I tried another way, I'd fail, right? Orki was astonished at Ikki's words. I was trying to not let it show. Even if you don't say it out loud, I know how inferior I am, and obviously how hard it is to get into this academy. If you know, then why are you taking the entrance exam? Well, it's to do with the situation with my family. My father won't let me continue through night school, but when I was graduating middle school, I decided I would, so I left home. Since my family aren't going to support my schooling even to keep up appearances anymore, I chose Hagun. That made sense. The Kurigane family had no desire for others to know that their famous line had produced an F-rank failure. They would not allow him to continue on to night school or provide him school expenses. Even the scholarship system was administered by the Japanese branch of the League of Mage Knight Nations, which was under Kurigane influence. Ikki had no option besides coming to a school like Hagun that provided necessities and waived tuition. But Kurigane-kun, your ability doesn't allow you to enter this school. Ikki did not match up to Hagun's standard. Orki pointed this out without hiding behind niceties, but Ikki did not falter and spoke without the slightest tremble in his voice. Right, So I came today to challenge that thinking. A black sword appeared in his right hand. I'll take victory against the entrance examiner. That's how I'll prove I'm worthwhile. Isn't that enough? How could it not be? All of the instructor knights employed at the school were graduates of knight academies and certified as proper knights at D rank or above. This meant defeating an examiner was evidence of actual D rank ability. Knighthood is a combat occupation, so it would be an appropriate display of eligibility, but… Well, I can't argue with that. Oorki-sensei, are you sure? That's unheard of. We were the ones who said that they should pick the method. It's an unprecedented situation, but he's gotten to the heart of it. Still, Kurogane-kun, will you let me ask one last question? What is it? Why choose me? You don't have to fight me, you know. For example, this guard is also a knight, so defeating him would also prove your power. That's true, but I'd rather face you, Oorki-sensei. Is that because you want to take advantage of my weakness? Ikki already knew about her health. Was this why he challenged her? Because her illness made her easy to beat. Haha. Ikki gave an exasperated laugh, as if he had heard a bad joke. Please stop pretending to be modest. Sensei, among the people here and everyone I've met today, the pressure I get from you is the strongest of them all. HMPH. Orki's mouth curled upward slightly at Ikki's words. KKK. In the next instant, screams filled the air of the practice arena. Dozens of selection candidates and multiple guards watching over the place drove the air from their lungs until they finally fell like decaying trees to the ground, foaming at the mouth. What just happened? The cause was a blood-red cutlass that had appeared in Yuyuri Orki's left hand. Violet pain. 2. A noble art that spreads the pain of my sick body, the friction of my rotting bones, the ache of my festering innards across everyone within a certain distance. The effect is as you can see. No one could keep their sanity at being inflicted with all the diseases violently ravaging Orki's body. Even the adults were screaming like young girls and falling unconscious from the pain like a circuit breaker had been flipped. And yet, you're not having any trouble enduring, are you? Ikki alone, without rolling on the ground, no, without the slightest movement, continued to stand there in the arena without moving his gaze from Orki. As the one who asked for a duel, I won't back down from pain. He had certainly heard Orki's description. Just breathing made his lungs seem to split, but Ikki smiled slightly. You're not the only one can bear it. It was a boorish test, wasn't it? Kurogane-kun, I see your resolve. If that's how much you want this fight, then Sensei won't refuse. Yuyuri Orki, the C-rank knight bearing the nickname of Jolly Roger. 3. Accepts this battle. I'm grateful, Orki-sensei. With those words, Ikki raised Intetsu and began his entrance exam. Part 3. The first to make a move was Orki. She lunged forward with speed like the wind into range of Ikki and increased the magic power in her sword. Let's see if he has the power to justify that courage. At the same time, she swung the red cutlass in her left hand, creating a scarlet slash that resembled a claw stroke. Such obvious moves won't get me. Ikki's black arc repelled the frontal slash that did not even aim at an opening. Well, I wasn't trying to. Orki did not think her first strike would reach him. Her true motive was to invite a swing of Ikki's katana. Though the first slash was deflected, she was already stepping deep into range, close enough to punch him. This was a distance better suited for the shorter reach of a cutlass than the longer length of a katana, and her deflected cutlass blade was quicker to return than Intetsu. SH. Kuh. 3 times the redness flashed, striking at Ikki, who guarded with Intetsu, but gradually his defense started to slow. His katana was a 2-handed weapon. At extremely close range, it could not follow the movements of a one-handed sword like a cutlass. And Orki was skilled, hiding her wrist motions as she swung her cutlass. Redness flashed nimbly like a conductor waving a baton, but struck with the force of her weight behind it. I'm amazed. The teachers of a knight academy even train in swordsmanship. I appreciate the praise, but not all teachers do that. Plenty don't study how to wield their devices this way. I'm just an oddball. Blazers were not required to go deep into swordsmanship. It was a pastime at best, since their true worth was in their supernatural abilities. Sword technique, no matter how excellent, was within the realm of mundane humans and basically powerless against magic. Swordsmanship gave only a tiny advantage against an opponent with the same rank in blazer ability, so studying it was considered a terribly inefficient use of time, and few knights bothered. Better to expand one's own magic than to practice something so pointless. I also got into it as part of training my spirit and kept it up out of habit. I'd say it's not really a big deal. Orky felt a bit let down by Ikki's performance. Honestly, I think he's already able to compete with me on swordsmanship. He had challenged a higher rank knight despite insufficient power, so there must be some reason he could look past the difference. But there were many youngsters with excellent physical fitness and sword technique who could not abandon the idea that their training would overwhelm the difference between blazer ranks. Orky wondered if Ikki shared that delusion. But I'm not sure if he actually studies the sword. Ikki's stance had no form. She did not see a warrior's refinement, only the use of reflexes to endure her attacks. Reflexes able to perform so well under the effect of violent pain were certainly worth something, but that was hardly enough to vindicate a boast that he could defeat an examiner, and so Orky was somewhat disappointed. If he knows he's inferior to others, he must be holding back something else. What's wrong? You can't take victory from me just by dodging. Or is your body hurting so much that you can only run around? Even with this taunt, Ikki devoted himself to the same defense. No, he was concentrating on the arcs drawn by the red flashes. He must have some other ability, Orky thought, that would break this stalemate. Perhaps a noble art. Maybe, but I won't wait for you. Clash. A loud ring of metal on metal resounded, and the black blade protecting Ikki slipped from its position. With a turn of her wrist, Orky had changed mid-attack from a cutting stroke to a reversed slash against his lower body. The unexpected angle had made Ikki's defense crumble, and Orky was not letting this opening escape. Swish, and a red blade flashed, aiming at Ikki's neck. Once the neck was cut by illusionary form, the opponent would be knocked out instantly. Since Ikki had not shown any special ability, it would be the end of his examination. But this is a battle too, so there's no helping it, right? In battle, no serious opponent would hold back from a certain kill, and Orky was treating fight seriously. Ikki had asked for that, so Orky would show no leniency. Her merciless strike was rather easily dodged, with only a slight movement of Ikki's upper body. For an instant, Orky's movements froze, because her victorious cut was dodged. No, the attack was not difficult to evade with good reflexes. She froze at the sight of Ikki's face in that moment, at the lack of surprise that he was being attacking in his moment of vulnerability, and at the lack of dismay with having to dodge with reflexes alone. His motion was so natural he might as well have stepped out of the way of a tree branch in his path. Right, I knew you'd change your tactics here. What? You predicted my winning strike. I knew you'd start losing patience. Sorry for vexing you, but while it's a battle, it's also an exam, and the specialty I'd like to show you needs a bit of time. Ikki switched Intetsu from both hands to only his right, and took a stance. That stance was no doubt Orky's own, like seeing herself in the mirror. But I'm ready. I've memorized all of your sword style, sensei. Upon saying such an unbelievable thing, Ikki's sword now swung from his side. The strength of the arm, the snap of the wrist, and the swing of the sword were all clearly Orky's. You're certainly imitating me well, but calling that a specialty is anticlimactic. This is just a street performance, right? This style Orky used was the product of her device being a cutlass. For a katana with its greater length, the same movements were unnatural and inferior. He could not win against Orky this way. Against the approaching assault, she countered with her own strike. Blades clashed and sparks danced, but this exchange would not last long. There was no doubt that the more nimble cutlass would win. I can't keep up with your speed. Orki could not explain it. Speed and agility should be in her favor, and yet, she could not follow Ikki's sword at all. No, he's pushing into me. How? Sensei, I may be imitating your sword style, but this isn't your technique. I'm pushing you back by taking your swordsmanship a step further and adapting with my intetsu on the fly. What is this boy saying? A step further? How can you do something like that so easily? After only facing a handful of opponents and seeing their styles, so how can you take them? Ikki smiled bitterly. Well, that's my specialty. I've been watching and copying other people's training since I was a child because no one would teach me. And before I knew it, I could understand everything of a style down from the branches of the current day to the roots of their principles just from seeing them for 3 minutes, flaws and all. Once I know that much, it's not hard to improve on a style. So I don't have a specific sword style or form. Instead of adopting one, it's better to take a few bits here and there and improvise my own. Though that's not the most honorable thing, so I can't really brag about it. Hearing this statement announced as if it was nothing, Orki felt more and more at a loss. She thought Ikki's stance was full of gaps, because he did not seem to have anything like a proper sword style, but that was a misunderstanding. He did not need a proper style. A style was a path toward understanding the principles of combat, and someone who could reach those principles directly had no need for one. How absurd, for someone so young to reach this level. As far as Orki knew, only a knight like the god of war Torajiru Nangu could attain such a state. She shuddered at the youth before her from the depths of her heart. Huh. With a cutting shout, a black strike at last pushed against the red blade, sending it away. The unleashed intetsu flashed. It was already too late for defense or evasion. The blade cut deeply into Orki at an angle, but since this was a mock battle, no blood came out. A device in illusionary form inflicts no physical wounds, and instead only a blood-red glow of physical strength gushed forth. But even illusions could damage, inflicting the pain of a real cut and the fatigue of losing strength. The damage to Orki would be more than enough to decide the match, if this was a match against a normal knight. Gwaya. The combatant fallen on one knee was Ikki. Part 4. What just happened. Pain burned through Ikki's body just as his diagonal slash touched Orki's shoulder, even though he had not taken a wound. On his knee, Ikki shook at this turn of events, but Orki's cutlass came for his throat before he could get in a breath. This time he could not evade as delicately as before. Trusting his reflexes, he threw his body backward to retreat from the red slash. Oh, you dodged. I guess you don't want to be caught in close range. Orki sighed. A diagonal line of red crossed her body. It was the afterglow of her life energy touched by intetsu, the mark of Ikki's slash, and Ikki realized what had happened. That mark, it's exactly the same as where I'm hurting. I got careless. Violet pain does more than share your physical condition. It also shares the wounds you take in combat, right? You understand it terribly well. Indeed, her violet pain was able to force the opponent to bear her wounds too, which meant that every strike Ikki put on her would all be mutual hits. This is too dangerous. I mustn't attack carelessly. But having said that, you can't stay turtled up forever, right? Would you please not read my mind? It's an obvious guess with you sweating so much. As Orki said, Ikki had a sheen of perspiration. Since the beginning of the test, you've been under the effect of my violet pain, sharing the pains of my body. I've felt this pain since I was a child long enough to call it a part of me, and I can endure no matter how bad it is. Not so for you. How much longer can you put up with it? She was right. Ikki had been fighting all this time under a raging pain that made many adults collapse. He could not push himself more than this. If this was a sword duel, you'd have won, Kuragenkun, I'll acknowledge that. But we're not swordsmen. We're blazers with supernatural powers beyond human understanding. The sword alone won't give us victory. So, I think it's about time you showed me your pride as a blazer. Show me your noble art, or continue trying to challenge me on endurance. Huh, I can't see how I'll win like that. Dragging out a fight against Orki was the height of folly, but Ikki would not win without a plan. An attack like the last one would just be repeating the same dance. To defeat her, he would need a strike with decisive damage and cause a pain that she was not ready for. Could he do that? I can. Ikki Kuragain had a way. Closing his eyes, he gathered the power of every cell in his body from the tips of his hair to the tips of his fingers. A blue flame erupted across his form, his magic power condensed to the point of visibility. By concentrating all of his spirit and holding nothing back, he would gain explosive power for a single short minute against a formidable enemy. This was Ikki Kuragain's noble art, Irushura. Once this power was invoked, he could not stop himself from exhausting it all. After this 1 minute, Ikki would have none left over. Raising a thundering shout, he stepped toward Orki. Here I come, sensei, and with this weakness I'll show you my worth. Part 5. Seeing that blue flame, Orki sucked in a breath. What a desperate way to use magic power. It was many times the amount she had felt in him before, so he must be drawing from the depths of his spirit, wagering his entire body and soul. Describing the idea was easy, but doing it was nigh impossible. Ikki Kuragain was devoting even his last dregs of life-preserving magic to the attack. How much determination did this take? Orki could not even imagine it. But Orki knew one thing. I have to defeat this boy, no matter what. She could not let this young lad use his strength so absurdly. Ikki was strong, and so abnormal that the other candidates were no comparison, but that was not enough. There were monsters in this world who would not take a single wound even if someone like Ikki exhausted all his body and soul to do it. If Ikki continued on the road of a night, he might chance upon those monsters, but Ikki would likely not give up. She could tell. After crossing swords with him today, Orki could already see what kind of person Ikki was. No matter how he lost, he would not stop believing in his own worth. Without giving up, he would try again and again, burning up his own life just as he was doing right now, and his body and mind would shatter. For an instant, Orki saw Ikki in despair, crashing against a wall he could not surmount no matter what he did. She could not allow it. Yuyuri Orki's values as a teacher would not let her disregard that possibility. Adults were to guide children. They had a duty to pull them back from the brink, to stop them from chasing a ruinous future. I can't lose this duel. Yuyuri Orki was resolved. With conviction not as the entrance examiner, but as a teacher and a knight, she intercepted the young lion clad in blue light. Ikki's speed was incomparably higher, more than similar knights might be able to follow, but a speed she could still grasp. She was, like Ikki said, stronger than anyone else here. As Ikki approached, she whipped the cutlass in her left hand calmly across his torso with perfect timing. Ikki could not stop at this speed, and took the red blade deeply. But in that moment, he disappeared from Orki's sight like mist. Ikki was standing a bit further away than she expected, and Orki did not understand. Was her timing wrong? No, it was perfect, but her attack was against Ikki's image. He had used a technique that, using footwork and spiritual pressure, created an illusion of his rushing body to make the opponent strike in vain. It was one of Ikki's original sword techniques, the fourth secret sword, Shinkaru. Orki had swung at that image. As a result, she could not defend against the true Ikki's sword, crossing the distance between them. Ikki would not let this chance escape. He swung Intetsu in his right hand and struck with all his might. She could not evade or block, but that was the same as before. Not yet. Orki was fighting with conviction. As a teacher, she would not allow a child to destroy himself. She would not allow the duel to end this way. At the moment of contact, Ikki's breath caught in his throat as he saw Orki do something he did not anticipate. With the cutlass raised skyward, she made an overhead swing, and without hesitation she cut her own right arm. Anguish erupted. Because of illusionary form, her arm did not fly off, but an equivalent sensation still passed through her mind. And that pain and loss was also inflicted on Ikki by violet pain. Ikki's right arm lost all its strength, and Intetsu flew from his grip. It was the consequence of betting all of his strength, read successfully by Orki. She had not intended to use her cutlass normally. Considering the difference in skill between them, Orki's attacks was unlikely to hit. She knew she would be dodged, so she put together a defense for when that happened. It was an unimaginable tactic. If not for illusionary form, the pain would be real. Even Orki would have trouble withstanding the agony of losing an arm. Who would be able to keep fighting under that? But this was for the sake of a young lad that she had only just met, a complete stranger. Orki did not hesitate to mutilate her own body for the sake of protecting another. Her students were like her children. What kind of mother would not protect her child? So without hesitation, she cut her right arm and deprived Ikki of his blade to protect his future. "I'm sorry, but this fight is mine." Ikki had no defense without a device, and he could not abort an attack with all his power to retrieve what he dropped. Orki turned the blade that she had used to cut her arm and slashed up at Ikki. Blood-red light gushed out. Part 6. The one to fall was Orki. Why? What had just happened? Why was Ikki, whose sword had been flung from his hand, still standing? And why, when she looked down at Ikki's left hand, did she see her own cutlass clutched there? The confusion lasted for a short while before she could remember that moment when Ikki, with the strength of his fingers and the snap of a wrist backed by Irushura, had twisted Orki's cutlass from her left hand and slashing her with it in the same motion. It took less than half a second. She knew of a single technique that could do this, snatching barehanded an opponent's sword to cut that opponent down. The Yajuu-style's barehanded disarm. 4. To even know that technique. I had the chance to see footage of it once, and I improved on my memory of it. I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to use it, though. Ikki stood firmly with beads of sweat on his forehead, having endured the fatal wound caused by mutual strike with Orki. On the other hand, Orki was already down. The completely unexpected strike had severed the thread tying her body and mind together, and she could not hold onto consciousness much longer. She had lost. I can't refute this outcome. Congratulations, Kurogane-kun. Thank you. But there's one last thing I want to say. What is it? Despite all this, won't you give up on becoming a knight? At those words, Ikki's expression hardened. Are you saying that you won't pass me? No, this is just a personal request. As a teacher, I think it's fine for kids to pursue their dreams with all they have. As a teacher, I want to help them. Even if a dream can't come true, striving for something is a good experience. But you're different, Kurogane-kun. You'll face heights beyond the strength your abilities can ever attain. It's very dangerous to not back down when you should, and exceed what everyone else calls reasonable limits. That noble art. It's not something you can use like a regular power, right? Ikki smiled painfully at this simple truth. You figured me out, huh? Ikki's special ability as a blazer was to double his physical ability by expending magic power, nothing more. By taking hold of inner power that living creatures should not use and concentrating it to an absurd degree, he was able to magnify the effect dozens of times. That's an act which will shorten your life. If you continue using it, sooner or later, you won't be able to recover. As a teacher, I want to keep you away from this school. Kurogane-kun, I'm sure you can succeed in many other ways. There's no need for you to sacrifice so much in a field that doesn't suit your strengths. So, please reconsider. For a knight, making such a request after losing a duel must be shameful, but Orki had to ask. She did not want to see this gallant, intense lad be ruined. Thank you for thinking of me when I challenged you so selfishly. Ikki understood Orki's kindness. He knew that she was setting aside her own pride to protect him. But even so, I'm aiming to be a knight. At the answer, Orki sighed. She knew that this would be his reply. She knew he understood her feelings and was sorry, but would never bend in his determination. I doubt tears would convince him. He's certainly very manly. It's a dangerous road, you know. Yes, but I have my reasons. Besides, I don't think I want a life dreaming of things I can achieve just by stretching out a hand for them. The dream that best suits me is one higher than I can reach. Ikki's eyes did not waver, and at that sight, Orki knew her own misunderstanding. He was not a child. He was a full-grown knight who would cut his way through life with his sword. Part 7. Well, It's about time for me to head back to the classroom. Orky stopped retracing her memories at Ikki's voice. Ah, right, please dismiss everyone for me. Seeing Ikki's straightened back as he left, Orky remembered her worry from back then, as well as the injustice of his family in intervening to hold him back a year despite his strength. But despite that injustice, Ikki was not bowed. Standing proudly, the light in his eyes was not the slightest bit clouded. Hey, Kurage-kun. Yes. Even now, I still think that pursuing the road to knighthood isn't right for you. Sensei. So please show me how wrong I am, okay? Show her that he was not going to stop, that he was not a child. Show her so that she and the world knew he was a valorous knight who could walk this road with conviction. Orky pushed Ikki onward not as a teacher, but as a friend. At this support, Ikki's eyes widened in surprise for an instant. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. He nodded and left the infirmary. The sound of his departing footsteps made a spirited rhythm, and Orky followed that rhythm into slumber. References: Up air. Aspirin, indomethacin, silestazole, nitroglycerin, pain relief medications. Aspirin and indomethacin treat inflammation. Silestazole and nitroglycerin fix blood flow. Up air. Violet pain. This uses the kanji Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Kaisam no Yumahara, bloodstained sea. Up air. Jolly Roger. This uses the kanji Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Shino Senkoku, death sentence. Up air. Yaju style, Yaju Shinkadryu, one of the oldest Japanese swordsmanship styles, established in the late 16th century. Conclusion. Ah, I see. I knew Ikki and Yuri-chan had a mysterious relationship, but it was like that, huh? Right. Senpai has always called Yuri-chan Orky-sensei, so I thought he was polite like that, but he really sincerely respects her. Still, Yuri-chan can release an area of effect noble art. Never knew that. But it leaves a huge problem afterwards. That's true. The exam candidates who got caught up in it were all collateral damage. Yeah, okay then. That's all 6 events. I hope if it was fun. This ends the Hagun Academy Wall Newspaper Special Edition, but the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival is still going strong. We'd love it if you cheer Senpai and Stella-chan and Shizuku-chan onward. Well, everyone, let's meet again in the next Wall newspaper. Bye-bye.